Hello and welcome on in here to the BNB show. That's right. My name's Brandon. This guy over here to my left is Seahawks Brendan Nelson. That's Brandon and Brendan coming at you tonight, continuing on through this rugged road of draft coverage, trying to find our way to the other side of it. We're almost there, Brendan. We're so very close. How are you doing this evening?
Less than a week away. Less than a week away. Our pick is probably less than a week away because usually the first round doesn't take that long. So this time next week, we will know what we did with pick 16 in all likelihood.
You're kidding yourself. You know he's trading out of the first round, Brendan. Come on,
but
now.
even that's informational.
You're getting their hopes up here, man. This is false data. We're giving them false hope. We don't do that here.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's very true. We could be looking at our pick coming down that line by this point next week. So hopefully you are getting excited because it's going to be very interesting. They can go so many different ways, can't they? Just so many different possibilities on the board for Brendan. There's not that one player kind of, I think as we were coming along a little bit into last year, that top 5 pick, we kind of knew, okay, if the quarterbacks are gone, it's going to be probably a BC. Even though Witherspoon was a little surprising, it wasn't shocking necessarily. Now, with that said, we're looking at a position tonight, Brendan, that's going to be what I would consider to be right there neck and neck with the wide receiver class in this draft as being one of the strongest, if not the strongest in the class. It doesn't have the sizzle of the wide receiver class, Brendan, but it does have the depth, does it not?
I would say so. Like, I don't know if there's going to be a corner that goes in the top 10 this year. Last year, I expected there to be one. Now, there was one. It wasn't the one I thought it was going to be, but there was one. This year, probably not happening. You don't have like a Jeff Okudah, even Okudah, I think went number 3 overall.
Mm-hmm.
You don't got somebody like that, but there are like 5 guys that could go in the first round. There are 5 first-round corners here, I think, potentially. So it's no joke. And then I had like 4 second-round guys, and then I had like 6 third-round guys. It never ended. It just kept going. And I guess it just kind of makes sense. When you have so many awesome receivers, you need a number of awesome cornerbacks to keep the balance.
You do. I think the thing you're touching upon is that we are starting to see some really upper line sensational athletes for the position over there, as opposed to maybe what we've seen through some of these 10-year period with a lot of the off cover corners or just the big guys that can't move, that they try to press guys to death off the line, lean on the loose college rules when it comes to the holding penalties, that kind of thing. Now, Brendan, we're actually seeing some guys that can move in space, both quick and fast, and even a little bit of twitchiness on top of it, huh?
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. It's I ended up with 36 guys that I looked at in total. So there's definitely some interesting skill sets in here. And I know there are a lot of people out there that don't really want to hear it. I know there's a lot of people out there who are resistant to the idea, but we might end up maybe needing one, you know?
Let's cover that part of the road. Me and you were talking a little bit about this before the start of the show, and I think this is something that I know we got a ton of corners, so I won't belabor this too far, Brendan, but there is a lot of Seahawks fans that have a little bit of a revulsion to the thought process of drafting a corner because there's a little bit of, I think, a built-in, you and I agree on this, a bit of, well, then that means that's the end of Tariq Woolen. Woolen's then going to be gone. Mm-hmm. And I get the understanding of this, but it's also one that you got to look through the lens of the new coach and what they want to do and where they want to go with this. And the new coaches do tend to roll over roster. New coaches are going to look for their kind of player at all of the positions that they want, especially for a coach that's going to be a defensive side of the ball. That's his side of the ball. You better believe he's going to want his kind of corner, right, Brendan? And that doesn't mean that Woolen's on his way out or that he can't be a part of this future, but it also doesn't mean that they're not going to maybe develop some starry eyes for a class, like you just said, that was very deep.
Yeah. It's very important to remember that except for Carl Scott, who is the DB coach, I guess, everybody else is new. Everybody in this building had nothing to do with bringing these guys in, except for, of course, the front office. But the coaches, they inherited all of this stuff. So I can say with a pretty decent degree of confidence that this coaching staff probably likes Devin Witherspoon because he's got such a great all-around game. It's hard to not like Devin Witherspoon. So I'm sure Macdonald's cool there. But after that, it's like, okay, well, he likes Mike Jackson enough to give him a $3 million tender. So he likes him that much. But does he like him as a long-term solution? I don't know. Does he like Trey Brown? who doesn't really tackle all that well when we know that's what Mike Macdonald likes. If I had to guess, he probably wouldn't be too excited about him. Does he like Kobe Bryant? Kobe Bryant barely played last year, and when he played, he didn't play that well. So maybe nobody likes Kobe Bryant right now.
And where is he playing?
Yeah, exactly. Where does he even go? And then, of course, you have the Riq Woolen part of it, where I think that he will probably be here this year, but I also think this is a very big year for him. I think this is a big year for him to start to define whether or not he is going to fit what this team is going to want to do defensively going forward. So other than Witherspoon, it's hard to know how this coaching staff feels about this cornerback room. So I wouldn't rule anything out. And remember, when Witherspoon came out, a lot of people said, well, he's going to play a lot of reps in the slot. And if that's the case, you could still have Spoon in the slot because most defenses are in nickel 75% of the time now. And then you have two outside corners that you need. One could be Woolen and the other could be Rookie X. So I'm not ruling anything out.
Yeah, I think all the points you make are the valid ones on this. And just on top of it, it's also one where a year from now, you mentioned the two players like Jackson and Brown, but even Woolen added in that mix is a guy that they like here. You've got to start to come to decision on these guys after a year from now. And having somebody on your roster that's set there so you're not caught in a pickle of feeling forced to have to pay somebody maybe you don't want to have to pay, or attacking the position in a major way, where maybe it's a weaker draft that year. Maybe there's not as many free agents. You also want to be a little bit having some foresight and looking ahead of where the position is going to be at a year from now, a bit as much as you can. All the more reason why I think that this does open up the door very wide, Brendan, and with a high possibility, because it is such a deep class, of them getting a corner somewhere in here. I'm not advocating for it earlier. I'm just saying that somewhere in here, and even a place like as shocking as Brendan is to say the top of the first round where we'll start, because though this might look like a place that there's no doubt at 16 they would go for, you just said at the top, there's not going to be a corner taken in the top 10. I agree with this. And that does mean that there's going to be a decent potential that top corner in this draft potentially could be sitting on the Seahawks doorstep come draft day.
Yeah. And look, my approach, and I'm being pretty firm here, is take the best player available. Take the best player available, figure out the rest later. This is not a great team right now. I don't think it's a bad team, but it's not a great team. This is a team that can use a lot of help in a lot of different places. And I don't count cornerback as being something where we just need to, like, the only position that I might completely ignore in this draft might be left tackle, because I don't see any way around the fact that left tackle is really sewn up here. Maybe receiver, but even then I would look at it and go, well, Lockett's going to be gone in a year. So I think we need to keep an open mind here. This is the time for an open mind with this brand new coaching staff.
Yeah, I agree. So with that said, we're coming up in the first round at 16. We could be looking at the number one corner on the board. I'll be interested to see where you are. I haven't checked with you in ahead of time to see where you're at with your number one corner quite yet. But let me start with mine, and then we'll pair back to yours. And this would be a pickle for me if we're sitting there picking for all the things we just talked about, Brendan, lead up to this for me with this pick. And that this guy, I think, is truly the best corner in this draft. I do have a blue chip grade on him because I just love his game so very much. And this would be a tough one for me sitting there at 16. But Quinyon Mitchell, to me, is just awesome in almost every way in how he plays. Were you as well blown away by him, or am I overrating this kid a bit?
Yes, I am a big Quinyon Mitchell fan as well. He is my number one corner. And he is a guy who I would have a hard time saying no to at 16. If he's there at 16, I would probably do it. And if the Seahawks do it, I know a lot of people will be unhappy, but I will not be among those people. Tested well at the combine overall. 6 feet tall, 195 pounds. So he's big enough to play outside theoretically. I don't look at him and go, oh, he's going to have to play in the slot. Arms are a little bit short, but by the way, I'll tell you, the mistake I made this year was I evaluated the cornerbacks after I did the edge rusher. So everybody's arms looked so short because I had just finished with the edge rushers that all have like 34-inch arms. And then these cornerbacks have like 32-inch arms. And I'm like, wow, that's really small, but it's not.
Well, to your point, though, there are a lot of small arm cornerbacks, though, too, in this draft. So it's a little bit of also just not that pure natural shock to the system, and a little bit more. We're going to have a couple of 29ers on here. I know we got a couple 30s. I know we got some 30.5s. You know what I'm saying?
Right. We do. So Quinyon Mitchell, been incredibly productive on the ball these last 2 years for Toledo. And I know that's going to be a warning flag for some people. He played for Toledo. Had 37 passes defensed over the last 2 years. That is a crazy amount of ball production. And the interesting thing with him was when he was at Toledo, they played a lot of man and they played a lot of zone, but it was all off man. They did very little press. So some people were going into the post-season process thinking, well, Quinyon Mitchell, going to be great in off man, going to be great in zone, but he doesn't know how to press. And then he goes to the Senior Bowl and he's pressing, and he looks like he's done it his whole life. So you don't even really have to worry about that all that much. So that's an exciting thing about him. His plant and drive, or some people call it the click and close, is really good. He recognizes routes before they happen and breaks on them. His route recognition is on point. He's stronger than the average player at the cornerback position, which is something I think Macdonald might prioritize. And he probably has the flexibility to play a little bit in the slot as well. The main issues I saw with him were he can get tricked by like double moves and fakes. He bites down a little bit hard sometimes. His flipping of the hips is a little bit slow, a little bit segmented. So I'm a fan. I put him right on the doorstep of the top 10 for me in this draft.
Yeah, he's on that same doorstep with me as well. I just think he's got star potential. Highest rated cornerback by PFF the past 2 years. Not a 1 year off, a 2 year off situation. I think he nearly tackles like a safety out there. He only gave up 48 total yak yards over the course of the season. So if you do make the catch on him, he is taking you to the ground and fast. I think he has everything athletically that you could want from the guy. 4.33, a 1.51 10-yard split. Are you kidding me? With a 38-inch vertical leap. I love the guy before I saw the testing numbers, and I was like, man, I was thinking he was going to be one of those, overachievers on the field athletically in what he's doing, but to know he has that, baked in what he brings from the skill set, I just think that he checks every box. And to be able to, I know that this last year was more of only one interception versus the 5 interceptions he had the prior year, Brendan. I think that was a lot of the quarterbacks just kind of not going his way this year versus the previous year, going, it's trouble if you go over there. But you put him into a place where he's on one side and then you've got Devin Witherspoon on the other side. You're going to have to throw it somewhere. And those guys are going to mount up and get a lot of picks. They're going to play the run. They're going to be complete cornerbacks. They can play zone or man, to the point you just made earlier. I just couldn't find much to really pick apart within his game, in my opinion. I liked it all the way around, and he would be tough for me not to be pulling the trigger on him if Seahawks were there. I know, like you said, it piss Seahawks fans off. I get that. Maybe you and I will be the people trying to be the psychologist come draft day and get on our couch. It'll be okay. Just tell us how mad you are, but I'll like it too. So I love this kid. He is your number one as well, though. Clear and free, is it free and clear number one, or is it a close number one for you?
I never had any doubt about him being number one. That doesn't mean there aren't other corners in this class I like a lot, but
no,
he has a decent leg up on everyone else, I think.
It's more to illustrate the praise of Quinyon than it is to take down the others, I would say, in that question. Just it's that he's that good.
Yeah, maybe let me ask you this real quick before we move on. Do you think he's a better prospect than Witherspoon?
Not quite, but very
I feel like
close.
he might be. He's faster. He's bigger. More ball production.
Yeah, I mean, I could maybe be talked into it. Let me put it that way. I think maybe part of what I like in him is that I think he's so close to Witherspoon, and maybe that's the hard part of saying, is he better? I think that what you're getting in here is a lot of kind of a Witherspoon clone. He's got the same arm length that Witherspoon had. He does test better than Witherspoon. They're both very super complete players. They can play zone or man. You can play them inside or out. They just have more about their game that's similar than. So I just think they're pretty much about the same-ish kind of level. There was something about with Witherspoon in the way that like pros would talk about him, former players would talk about him, former wide receivers of the sport would talk about Witherspoon when he was coming out. That was like, okay, there's something you're really in this guy's game is just, standing. You're speaking out about him in special terms. I don't know if I've heard that same stuff with Mitchell here, but I would put him in, if I have Witherspoon ahead of him, Brennan, it's by like a single strand of hair.
Okay. I can dig it.
All right, let's peel on to the second one. What was your answer on that one? Do you have Mitchell? You do have Mitchell ahead?
Offhand, I do. I
You got
will
to,
admit,
then you have to take him at 16 if that's the case.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly. I think I got to be on top of that. I mean, I was not entirely in love with Witherspoon last year because I was looking at him through that traditional Pete Carroll lens.
mm,
So that probably threw off my initial evaluation a little bit. I was looking at him as a man corner who was a little undersized. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. But obviously, with having seen his rookie year and how good he was for the Seahawks, I would answer that very differently if I had the information that I have now. But I'm just saying, looking back at what we knew
I get
last
what you-
year.
yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's a fair way of looking at it.
Mhm.
All right, well, here's my number 2, and this may be a place we're already starting to potentially find some disagreement here. We'll see on this one. This is a guy I put at number 2 as much because of, I think, his fit to the Seattle Seahawks defense, this new Seattle Seahawks defense. He has come out to Seattle and visited the Pacific Northwest on an actual trip. One of those trips, one of those players Seattle has had out here in person. And he goes by the name of Cooper DeJean, Iowa corner, 6'1.5", 203 pounds, 31 inches, 4.2 40-yard dash. Brendan on his pro day. So I don't know if you had those numbers, by the way. I think because he didn't run at the combine. But very, very, very quick, Brendan. This kid is a fun type of player, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And he might be just what Mike Macdonald is looking for when you think about it. There's a little bit of Kyle Hamilton here, maybe in his versatility. When the season started, everybody was listing this guy as a safety, and he probably brings a little bit of that versatility to the NFL. I think you could play him in a few different roles. Last year, his production was stunted a little bit because he got hurt. I think that's important to note here. In 2022, when he played the full season, he had 5 interceptions and an 88.5 PFF grade. Last year, both those numbers were way down, but he was hurt. Got good size, pretty decent size. His click and close is really good. He's really good at like working his way through traffic when chasing the ball carrier. Really powerful tackler. He's got great awareness. His ball skills are excellent. They're not on the level of Quinyon Mitchell, but nobody is really in this class. I don't think anybody has better ball skills than Mitchell.
Me too.
Might struggle a little bit in man coverage because he doesn't have elite reactive athleticism. I don't think he has great like straight line athleticism. That's why you see this 40-yard dash, this 10-yard split. These are all good. He's less effective the further he gets away from the line of scrimmage. I will say that. I think he's better when you have him near the line of scrimmage. And obviously the injuries last year, but I would put him somewhere around that middle to slightly late first. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Cooper as well. I think he does, like you say, a little bit of the tight hips, which is on the transition and flipping the hips and, getting on that stuff can be a little bit at times, not super bad, but just there's a little bit there versus his speed, and quickness, which you feel. What I thought helped with him, Brendan, was the 5 picks came last year, sometimes at a cost to him on really finding a position and being able to settle in a position. And he was used all over the place, which is great that he brings that versatility, but it also just didn't let him just get comfortable and locked in one spot. He did this past year, only gave up 20 completions on the season, barely any yak on that side of it if you make the catch on him. So he was just a very, very close, even in that injury kind of thing that he was dealing with, to being a lockdown kind of guy. So he is also a guy that with that prior year in playing safety, and I watched him play Sam linebacker snaps where they had him on the ball with the other 2 linebackers there, and he's down there playing it right up on the line of ball. Slot, some free safety snaps from the prior year. They used him all over. This year, they locked him in the corner, let him roll out there, let him fit to what he can do naturally at his best, and he was fluid back there to me. So I love his upside, ball skills. It's rare for the position. He's not a ferocious tackler. He'll do just enough in that realm of things, but still good enough. Still a plus guy as a tackler out there. So even though I would say, even though it's not to that ultimate degree, it still is kind of like safety tackling ability you get from a little bit versus the corner, like some of the ones we're going to talk about. And there's a lot of them in this draft, let me tell you, who do not want to tackle. That's not the case with him. So a lot of upside on this guy, Brendan. You trade back 23, 24, bing, bang, boom. You jump on Cooper DeJean at that point. I would understand it. He can play, understanding with this is the thing I think he likes about Witherspoon too, Brendan, is that you have guys that you can start here And you can say, okay, we're going to send you to this spot on the football field post snap, which is going to be very unorthodox, and normal teams aren't going to be like, they'll never see the corner just suddenly shoot across the field. Like, what is he doing? You know, he's not even chasing the player. He's like moving to a different spot. But these are the kind of players, Cooper DeJean or Witherspoon, that can do this type of stuff. And it's a very specific skill that stands out in them.
Mm-hmm. He feels like a Mike Macdonald corner. He feels like a Seahawk. Like sometimes a team drafts a player and it just feels right. Like when the Ravens drafted Ed Reed, I think that was the greatest example ever. It just felt right. This guy feels right as a Seahawk. And I know, again, this is another guy. If the Seahawks draft him, people will lose their mind. But I'm telling you right now, in the long run, you will not regret having Cooper DeJean on your team, because he's a dog. He's an absolute dog. Plays the run really well. I like how good of a tackler he is. And Macdonald would have a lot of fun with him.
He would. And the variety of things you could do conceptually with both him and Witherspoon on the field at once would be tremendous. You know, give Macdonald more fluidity to move guys around, and I think the defense becomes all that much more dangerous. I like your Hamilton comp too, just a little bit of a shrunken size Hamilton. He's not 6'4", but same kind of thing that he can bring from a skill set part two.
Yeah, and I think Hamilton probably has a little better reactive athleticism, a little bit.
He can flip the hips a little bit better, though he's a little taller guy. So there's that belabored tall guy thing that you get with the hip flip, but he's a little more, it's the thing that does stand out with Cooper is things are a little bit tight around those hips as far as that goes with the flipping and whatnot. Like, I don't think I was able to find the times, for instance, on his shuttle or his 3-cone. Maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's keep it on moving then now to my third guy. We're going to get some disagreement here at some point, folks. Me and Brendan won't just agree on everyone down the line, but we might. It might happen too. A guy couldn't get any testing numbers on. I don't know if you found any for him.
No.
Man with the coolest name in the draft. We got to give him that first. Okay. Your name's Kool-Aid McKinstry. That's kind of badass. Okay. So I'm got to give you the nod there. This is also a really, really, really fine corner, Brendan. Really athletic kid out of Alabama. No testing numbers, but before you get into your evaluation, do you like my Marshawn Lattimore comparison?
Marshawn Lattimore, that does feel about right. Whenever I think of Marshawn Lattimore, though, I think of him in the NFL, where it felt like he got 7% worse every season. It was like some weird Blake Griffin voodoo magic where somehow his best year was his rookie year, and then it was just like a slow decline. It was weird.
Those Alabama corners came in, Saban works them, Brennan. He works them to the line. He works them from morning, noon, and night. So their bodies are just kind of spent by the time they get to the pro level sometimes.
That's right. But I like him too. This guy started the season as the consensus number one corner. Now he's not even considered the number one corner in his own team. So weird how that works out sometimes. Didn't have a stellar breakout year in 2023, admittedly. Somehow went through the whole year with no interceptions. Has one over the last 2 seasons combined. But still played well. He's a good tackler. He gives effort in that area. He can do press man. He's got great quickness and lateral agility, flips his hips well when turning his back to the ball, which is such an important skill that a lot of these corners do not have. When they have to go from their back pedal to turning around and sprinting down the field, it sometimes doesn't look right.
No.
Does have some slot corner versatility, although he is big enough to play outside. I think he does have a little bit of a propensity for getting beat over the top. Bigger receivers are going to out-physical him a little bit. And it feels like he's not as fast on the field as it should be. Like, it feels like he's giving up separation, even though he has good speed. It's one of those weird things where maybe it's just, it's one of those weird things where, like, you can have these receivers who build separation even though they're slow. So it's kind of the opposite here. He's fast, but I feel like he gives up a decent amount of separation. I think good coaching is going to clear up most of the issues with him. He's only 21. That's another important part of this. When you're only 21, you're going to get better. It's just impossible to not get better when you're 21 almost, it feels like. So I do think he's a first-round pick. I put him in kind of the late first, but I think he's clearly worthy of being a first-round pick.
Yeah, I do too. Have him in the first round. I think he gets taken. I think he's kind of a safe cornerback in this first round, Brendan. I mean, there's maybe some bust factor to Quinion Mitchell, Toledo competition, or some bust factor to Cooper DeJean. Didn't play enough corner to solidify himself out there. Here you got a guy that is a former 5-star prospect at the position, a 3-year starter at Alabama. And Alabama is not a place that you're going to go out there and start where they give you the keys to the castle. Oh, you're a 5-star. here you start. Guess what? The whole cornerback room is full of 5-star players. You've got to earn your way onto that football field to get it. I do see him as more of, like you say, a pure outside cornerback. 19 receptions on 39 targets this past year. So though the interceptions may have not been there, he certainly was getting it done as far as not allowing completions. You talked about how he stays in phase off the press man situations, the flipping the hips in those situations, staying and running with. I thought that was as well outstanding. I think he's got great field intelligence for the position. He just doesn't get tricked or fooled. Weird combination routes with receivers doesn't throw him into some, weird chaotic, I don't know what to do now. He stays with it. He's like a shadow in coverage, just a pure cover corner off man press. Only 3 missed tackles on the year last year as well. So you can rely on him as far as a tackler goes, Brendan. The thing with the interceptions, though, too, I will say, is that there's not ball skills. It's not happening there on that front. You're not getting any picks from him on the other side of it, unless it's like a tip ball or a big overthrow, and he's just kind of getting to sit there and he can just kind of double clutch it there with the 2 hands. You're not getting it on that. So those aren't coming along. I mean, that's kind of that skill set is, we've learned this long enough with plenty of corners to come through here. Your hands are there or they're not. It's not going to develop with time or develop from college to the pros.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. I think it does happen, but it happens rarely enough to where you can't really lean on that as some kind of a thing that will bail you out.
No, you absolutely can't. And so this is why he's not a higher rated player. If he had ball skills and he had gotten those picks with what he brought, I think he would be considered a higher player. But that is the place to me where if you have a corner where I can't rely on you to take away the ball, then I'm or have any hope for it, then it's got to ding you just a little bit. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit. Mm-hmm. You did have him as your number 3 here too as well, or are you buying the hype on the Terrian train?
I'm actually interested to hear what you said about Terrian, because when I looked at him, I was mostly pretty impressed. I did actually have Terrian up there with Dijon and above McKinstry, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say about Terrian. Is he your next guy?
He is the next guy. So I would say that if even though I do have the first the 2, we do get to that thing where I always, this is my little picadillo, Brendan, where it comes down to when I got 2 guys that are basically rated on top of each other, trying to separate or say this guy's so much better than that guy, or this guy's got that way up over the top of that guy. I don't want to make it sound like that. Because I still do like Terrian Arnold as a first-round corner, and I still think that he's got a really good chance to be a solid NFL football player. There are kind of sometimes guys that just watching the way that they play the game, there's something that's a little bit out of sorts. And with him, it's a little bit harder to see because he is an outstanding tackler. In fact, maybe the best tackler in this draft. I think a big part of what I could say that is nice about Terrian is that the floor is there and legitimate. He's going to be a really great tackler, who can get some interceptions for you on the outside, bare minimum. Regardless of whatever he's doing in coverage, giving up catches, not giving up catches, he will provide you those 2 things with the 5 interceptions he had this past year. 13th highest graded cornerback by PFF on the season. So a lot of the outlying numbers here look very good. I think that when it comes, and I know he's a hard worker as well, and what we hear about him, he did give up over about 400 yards this year. So when he's over there on the other side versus Kool-Aid's not getting targeted, you're getting targeted, you're giving up catches. And I think that there was as much grabbing with him on tape as any corner that I saw throughout the process of this draft process. And that is saying something because college does give you a lot. They let you get away with a lot more grabbing than you get in the pros. You can sit there and just hold on damn near all the way through the route, and they will let you get away with it. It's kind of wild to watch sometimes how much the refs just like, let him go, let him play. And he took well advantage of that. And he's not going to be able to lean on that skill at all at the pro level, in my opinion, Brendan. And I'm very worried that I feel like sometimes I'm watching an athlete that can tackle and catch, but the feel of the timing of the position, the flow of your footwork, the pace, the knowing when to transition and break your hips and get close back out on the route, that all of that stuff just is kind of doesn't naturally come to him. It's a guy that can play guitar and he's hitting all of the riffs, but he can't just get you to the rhythm section point of playing through the normal part of the song, right? He's doing the Guns N' Roses, but he can't, just get to the normal part where you got to, hey, I need you to stay rhythm here through the normal part of the song, buddy. And he's like, I can't. How?
Yeah, I found myself being mostly positive on him. He's not fast, but he's explosive. He's got explosive moving skills, even though he's And I think that's like one of the big fears with him. He runs a 4.5, which is not even. I mean, it's not average historically. It's certainly not good by modern standards. He's smart. He understands zone coverages. He's a good tackler. He's okay in press man, although there are a lot of bad reps that he put on with press man, I think. I don't know. How much do you think Macdonald's going to want to run press man this year? Do you see him doing it?
It all comes down to how much he wants the scheme to be fluid. Wink Martindale will run a ton of press, especially when he's want to throw blitz looks at you. But then last year we knew from Macdonald is he ran a lot of off coverage looks. But then you and I talked about this. He ran the off coverage looks, we probably believe, because his cornerback room he couldn't trust as well on both sides. So you run the off coverage to give them that, if you have a guy's a little slow and maybe he's best in zone, give him that extra 7-8 steps off the line of scrimmage so that he can stack and stay on top of the route if it is a 9. Versus you put him up and press, you better be able to turn and burn. You better be able to run with that guy. Mm-hmm. And when you talked about Terry in that 4.5, I don't know if he is 4.5 on the field. And a lot of the grabbiness comes from these college players where they're very fully well aware, these cornerbacks, that they're not fast, these grabbers. That's why they're grabbing. The guy's right to here. They're running. They're going, oh crap! And then you see that hand come out deep into the route, and it does relate right back to speed. It ain't like the guy shook him out of his pants and he's doing the grab to keep him from crossing him over. It's simply the guy's running past him in some way. So that's really where my worry is. I still do say that Tyrian's got a pretty solid floor, I think, because he can still be that stuff clean. He can clean up the grabbing. Number one, he's leaning on it like training wheels right now. So just take the training wheels off the bike. He's going to crash a few times, but he'll eventually learn how to keep himself on top of the thing. But
yeah,
it's worrisome for me nonetheless.
Yeah, I feel like he gives up a lot of easy catches when he plays the off man too. Like there's a pretty big cushion there. Which, maybe that's also because he doesn't trust his own speed. Maybe he's like, I don't want to get beat over the top because I'm not going to be able to catch up. It's like the end days of Trey Flowers in Seattle where he was just playing 20 yards off every time.
It's a good relation. Remember how he just had that lack of feel? Like he didn't kind of trust himself. To your point, that's more than the grabbiness on the thing. I think that's that. It's those two combos. It's the grabby and it's that natural feel for how to read and feel things. And it's not to say that I don't think he's got some good football intelligence, but it's just that he has just a guy that just doesn't feel comfortable out there in what he's doing. And I don't know that there's the big room I see to grow on that. It's like there's things you got or there's things you don't have sometimes for me on the football field. And if I see a guy that doesn't have something like that, it'll definitely stand out to me and I'll kind of, as I said, put the highlight on him like him here where it's like, it's just not there. But that off coverage is definitely where it shows mightily.
So I do think he's a first rounder. Maybe I think if you're running a heavy zone team, you could justify taking him in the middle late first.
Oh, absolutely. If you want to run zone team, if you want to run press and you're just like, look, we're going to get safety help over the top. We're in a lot of cover 2 for you. Run your press. We're going to pull you off your hands after 5 yards. You're not going to have to worry about getting beat over the top because we'll have the cover 2 safety over the top to keep you clean the majority of the time. But just you're going to maul guys and play the run. And there's a scheme you can find for that. Certainly there's going to be some place that'll be perfectly happy. I mean, the Niners might look at a guy like Terry and Arnold and love him if he slipped down to them. I mean, I don't think he would get past them if they were picking late in the first, as much as I know they want maybe a lineman.
Right.
Kevin Mullen, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that. Kevin asks, how does the NFL measure arms? I think I got longer arms than T-Rex Arnold. Question. Seriously, are you both hoping for a trade down? I want Chris Jenkins.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how they do arms, but I'm assuming it's standardized across all players that they do. Be irresponsible otherwise.
Yes, they measure from the end of the bicep or shoulder blade to the tip of the middle finger with the arm extended horizontally away from the body.
Okay. My favorite is like they would do this a lot in the NBA draft where they would have details on a player prospect. They would be like, he can sit in the back seat of a car and roll down the windows on the two front doors without leaning forward. That's my favorite way to measure arm length.
He can scratch the underside of his foot standing straight up tall. Yeah, I like those too, man. Because it's as you get with this, you can get into these same kind of terms as you're writing down your notes, and I have to put a few things in there occasionally to spice it up a little bit. Where I'm like, just put some wild thing in there to say it, just to kind of throw a little bit of extra in there. But it does well. It helps it sink in, right? You'll remember that guy's long at that point if somebody says something like that. So, in regards to that, thank you, Kevin, for that donation. But also in regards to your question about trading down. This is a pickle one for me, Brendan. This is a tough I get asked it a lot, definitely, Kevin. I struggle with the question because on the surface of it, I just want to immediately go, yeah, sure, yeah. But then it gets a little more complicated for me on that. Are you the same way with that one?
I think it's going to be impossible for me to make this judgment until the draft is here, and then I see what's available. But I do lean towards a trade down because I think it's more likely than not that when we get to that pick, there's not going to be anybody that I'm super over the top with. Like we talk about Bowers. I just feel like at the end of the day, Bowers doesn't get past 11 or 12.
Agreed.
Some people are talking about 6 quarterbacks going in the top 15. I feel like this whole JJ McCarthy thing is a smokescreen, and he's not even going to go into first. I feel like people are just messing with us. I can't believe that's actually going to happen. So,
Brendan, it's happening. It's happening, man. If this doesn't go with him going in this top of the 15 picks with this much that's been put behind him, and it ain't fans pushing this, Brendan. That's the thing with this whole McCarthy thing. It ain't Michigan, honks out there trying to just, Michigan's the best, so McCarthy should be taken. This is NFL personnel people. This is former NFL personnel people. This is former scouts talking about this from what they're hearing from within inside NFL circles. So if this is that smokescreen, this is one of the biggest smokescreens I've ever seen. This is 4 smokes being thrown down in COD type smokescreen levels at once. So it's happening to me. I think you're in disbelief because your assessment of McCarthy is so far off of where you can believe him going. And it's maybe you're going to look at this, and I'm not trying to speak for you, but you'll look at this in retrospect. If it is picked at 5, if he goes at 4 or 5, you're looking at that pick going, that's maybe one of the highest overdrafts for a quarterback I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah. And it would be one thing if there weren't enough quarterbacks in this draft, but that's not the case at all. Like when you see something like, when you see that quarterback that gets boosted up the boards at the last second, it's usually because there were only 2 quarterbacks in the top 10. We needed another one. That's kind of what happened with Jay Cutler. That's kind of what happened with Ryan Tannehill. They needed another quarterback. That's not the case this year. There are so many quarterbacks that are, I suspect, going to go in that top 15. You didn't need to force another one. So I don't get it either. I mean, you do make a good point. I don't know. I just expect to get to draft day and then everybody just kind of realizes that, he doesn't really have, the only thing he has is his winning percentage, which, I mean, Max Duggan had that, right? Max Duggan beat JJ McCarthy.
He's got his third down completion percentage, Brendan. Come on. Don't undersell that too. He's got the third down completion percentage. The sample size can third down completion percentage.
Yeah. Yeah, he's Desmond Ridder had that. Desmond Ridder never lost in college, pretty much. He lost 2 games. So I don't know. Part of me is still expecting people to snap into focus and realize, wait a minute here. But you're probably right. What's I know he's better than Ken Dorsey, but what really separates JJ McCarthy from somebody like Ken Dorsey? I don't think it's that big of a discrepancy. So I'm just waiting for people to realize that.
Yeah, I number one, I'm with you 100% in your outlook of the player. You know that with me, and it's shocking to me that this is getting here. But I also had this happen to me with Mac Jones a couple of years ago. So I guess this is for me my Mac Jones lesson, where I looked at Mac Jones and I remember I was ready to laugh my happy butt off if the Niners were going to take him. I was going to be so happy if they were doing that, because he's not that good. And another guy comes from winning from the program, Alabama. It's one of those things where the NFL tricks itself into these guys. And because you're no longer like you were 20 years ago, paying quarterbacks $100 million coming out the gate and having to throw them that big of a contract, the squeeze is worth the risk. It's okay. It don't work. We flip it around. We go back, get a quarterback in a couple of years, whatever. But if we hit, oh my God, it's one of those worthwhile risks that you take. And in regard to your question, it really doesn't come down to like, there's so many quarterbacks in this draft. Why you go to McCarthy? Because 3 are gone. 3 are bye-bye.
Yeah.
So it's really then about Nix, Penix, and McCarthy. And wherever your evaluation stands on any of those 3 guys, Brendan, there is a wide difference of the type of player each and every one of those 3 guys is. And I only say that because we know the NFL has its predilections to each team kind of having their own personal little taste for that kind of player that they like. And that's to me where it's, Giants went for Daniel Jones a couple years ago. I looked at Daniel Jones coming out and I went, what are you doing? Like, people are going Peyton Manning. I go, in what universe are you making a Peyton Manning comparison to that googly-eyed? How? But this happens. The teams get this stuff wrong. And it's wild to watch, but it's also fun because we're going to be able to benefit on the back of this, Brendan.
Right. But anyway, to go back to the original point, I feel like there's going to be a big pivot point when the Jets pick, because the Jets, they could take Bowers. They could take Fatanu. They could take Fashanu. I think that's going to be the interesting one. I think that's kind of the thing to wonder. Who do the Jets want at left tackle? Do they want Fatanu or Fashanu? Who do they think is better? If the Jets take Fashanu, I feel like Fatanu has a real chance of falling to us. And that would be something I would be ready to jump on at 16, no problem.
Sure.
If Fatanu goes, then that might create an effect where by the time the pick gets down to us, there's not much there that I'm super compelled by.
That's where you got to the heart of the question for me on that. That is the hard part for me to answer on this, Kevin. And it's went a long way around on this. Sorry about that, brother. But I would certainly lean towards trading back. But if there is that player that slips and dives and dips and is sitting there, and it's not a big wide range of collection of players, but there's a handful of guys that if they do fall into there, I just can't quite move back. I got to take the elite talent, trust in the evaluation. As hard as that would be to wait till the 3rd round, sometimes you just got to jump in that way and you got to read it kind of in the moment. So it's the part of what will make the 1st round really fun for our Seahawks is that this is not a set path for us right now, and that there's so many different ways that they could go. But in general, yes, Kevin, just there is a little like, but if on the other side of it. The Snail, what's up, man? Thank you for the $2 donation. He says, is it fair to say that JJ had the most pro-style offense?
Well, I did point out when I looked at him that one thing about him was that he was very comfortable under center. And a lot of these college quarterbacks are not, because they never play under center. Penix is almost never under center. Let's see, who else? Who else am I thinking of who's always in shotgun? Like Caleb.
Nix is pretty much almost always in shotgun.
Yeah, isn't Caleb almost always in shotgun?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a spread system too with yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but at the same time, it feels like such a low bar to clear, right? Like these guys learn how to play under center. These guys learn how to play pro-style offenses. I don't know. It just strikes me as, searching for things to say that are positive about him, because he doesn't have the cannon arm, because he doesn't have the over-the-top mobility or escapability, because he doesn't have those traits. Even you pointed out, like, he's not doing that much processing. Maybe he's doing more than Bo Nix, but he's not really doing any of that either. So it just feels like you're searching for something to say.
Yeah, I think that there's some certain reads in the offense of Michigan which may have had some stylistic stuff with it being back to NFL through Harbaugh kind of related in there, where it's a lot of, from what I've read with McCarthy's pre-snap designated stuff. But to Brendan's point, that was about post-snap going through processes, which is what you don't see. It's not him going back and going, well, what? He's not full field reading. It's like a lot of these quarterbacks in college on that, where it's one read and then you go to your next thing. It's throw the ball where, go to your check down, or it's not, you're not seeing him process. And yeah, the under center stuff definitely gives you the most part that's going to look most pro style like, because these other quarterbacks just don't do it. So in that realm it is. But to Brendan's bottom line, this and mine too with this Snail, these are small little things. The footwork can be trained, and let's also acknowledge the spread concepts have found their way into the pros. The Seahawks are running the Washington Huskies offense. If Michael Penix walks into the door tomorrow, Michael Penix will not need to have the under center type stuff to learn past them trying to, include a little bit extra stuff into the offense because of it, and that stuff is coming more into the league, not coming less into the league. So I don't know if the pro style stuff, especially with the Michigan offense and how it was being run, which Harbaugh went back to, he was there for a while with spread concepts. And now he went back to that boring, I'm going to hammer you. I mean, is that really the most intricate of offenses, the San Francisco offense prior to Kaepernick with Alex Smith running it, Brendan? Do you remember that? It was like,
yeah.
A gap, A gap, A gap, A gap. Oh, we got to throw a 3rd and 3, toss into the flat. It isn't exactly like calculus.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's like, it feels like a really low bar that he has to clear to impress people. It's like, I'm sure that Spencer Rattler could have done what JJ McCarthy did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if JJ McCarthy could have done what Spencer Rattler did.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. Yeah, I'm not sure if he could have either as well, because Rattler had to process and go through things, and he was forced by baptism by fire to do so, where JJ was not in that same place. So yeah, on the surface you can say it that way, but in the most sort of paper thinnish sort of way, Snail, in the most like just like a little thin layer of film you're pulling off, so to speak, of pro style. Nolan in the house. What's up, my man Nolan? Good to see you as always, brother. He says, I am still probably a trade back guy. I believe it was Hawk Blogger that went through John Schneider's first round picks, 1 through 20, pretty good. 20 plus, pretty bad. Thank you all for the great content. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, generally it's probably easier to hit on a pick the higher it is, right? You're picking from a better pool of talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, to your point on that, Brendan, and now we get to, I remember we talked about this last year. We haven't talked about this part in a while, but let's just take a quick look into your point on this. The last, we've had John Schneider picking in the top, 12, 5 times, and every single one's been a hit.
Let me think. Okung, Earl. Was Earl top? No, Earl wasn't top 12, was he?
Top 12. Yep, top 12.
Oh, okay, you're right. Okay.
Irvin.
Cross. Okay, Irvin? I thought Irvin was like 15 or something.
Let's call it top 15. Let's go top 15.
Okay, Irvin.
Yep.
Cross, Spoon. I'm trying to think.
That's it.
I think that's it, yeah.
No, you're right. That's all. All hits. All hits.
Mm-hmm. Not all hits are created equal, but yes.
Not all hits are created, but no busts. And that's back to your point again. It is easier for you to pick at that top point. This is the thing I always go back to and rail on a yearly basis. And I think sometimes people go, I don't think that that's really the way it is. People will push back on me in this. They'll go, no, there's more than that in the first round. There has to be more than that in the first round. And I always say, it's only really about 10 to 12 blue chip guys you get a year. And then once you get past that and you're getting into 13 onwards into like that 65 range, they're really all a lot more closer together than they are further apart. But there's an expectation in general terms of I'm picking at 13, I should get player bump. And it just doesn't play that way out really in how the talent pool works, in my opinion. I think the other part that's been the tough part about them picking bad in the 20s that's made this even more, it's already an issue on the surface of it. It's already hard to get good players out of that spot anyway, in my opinion. 2 things that's hurt John through that period too, Nolan, is number one, he's not just been picking at 20 or 21. He's made high efforts to move back into the deep 20s more often than not. So he's getting pretty firmly into that tier 2 range where you're not dealing with the best, the best of the best in there. So I think that's another part. And then the second thing I was going to say is that they drafted for need a lot of those years as well as the final hammer to drive that in. And when you're drafting for need and you're trading back in the 20s and the talent pool is a little bit muddled at that point, it's hard to get it right.
Yeah. Right.
But just one last point, Brendan, on this one. We'll bounce over back to the corners on this, Nolan. I still am in favor of trading back this year because it's not that typical of that past where the talent pool dropped off. You might get to 29, 30 and you're into tickling tier 3. We're talking about going from, a place at 15, 16 where you're dropping back to a 23, 24, where you're still in that range to get the same player. Plus you pick up that second round pick. It's why this draft has to be looked at in a unique way from those other drafts where they move back in that way. Appreciate you, Nolan. Thank you,
Nolan. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so let's move on here to. Did you have another first round grade on this other guy that I'm going to bring up? I think this will be the guy if you do. I don't have a first round grade. Do you have any other first round grades?
I do have one, but I don't think he would be a first. I don't want him. I'll put it to you that way.
Okay, you
I
think
think
he's going
that
to be
somebody
taken in the
out there
first
will
round?
want him.
Okay, he's going in the first round. You believe?
I think so. Yes.
All right, hit me with him. Who you got?
I do have Nate Wiggins, the Clemson corner. So pretty small, pretty slight of build, which is one of the reasons why I don't think he'd be a very good fit. Almost had the fastest ever 40 time for a corner at the combine.
Mm.
Really, really fast. He can fly. Somehow had a 1.59 10-yard split, which sounds impossible. It's like he ran the first 10 yards as like a three-legged race, and then he got to go for the last 30 or something.
Yeah, he was
I, I
hopping.
don't I don't know how he did that, but he did it.
Kids call it
Um,
island
yeah, I
swag.
guess. Was he doing the gritty for the first 10 yards and then he did a normal run for the last 30?
He thought that he thought it was going to make people more excited because they'll be like they'll do that and they'll go as he's finishing off because he's
Hmm.
like shows he can fly at the end. So it's
Hmm.
he kind of thought the finish would stick more in
Yeah,
people's mind than the start.
right. So he's got good ball skills, reads routes well, his click and close is good. He diagnoses plays well. He's got a good amount of versatility, I think, to play man and zone.
Mm-hmm.
But his movement skills are a little bit like he's not a very fluid mover, even though he's a fast and straight line. He's not interested in playing the run. Like it's not even just he's not a very good tackler. No, he's not into it.
At
That's
all.
that's for somebody else to do.
Yeah.
That's for the other guys. Um his hip flipping looks segmented, and he might be too small to be an outside corner. He has the frame to add weight, but then he loses his speed. I don't know if he wants to do that. So I'm a little. Yeah, I wouldn't want him in Macdonald's scheme. I don't think he'd be a fit at all. I do think some team will look at his speed and be like, "That's a first round guy."
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like with the what's the name of the Texas receiver who ran the 4.21?
Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, I don't think he's a first rounder at all. But I would not be surprised if somebody's like, "Oh, look at that speed! I got to take this guy in the first round." It might
Yeah.
happen here, but I personally would not do it.
To your point, we had a draft once where a Hollywood Brown went in the first round, right? And Xavier Worthy probably has a lot of in common with that as a guy as a player.
John
So it's
Ross went
your
in the top 10.
John Ross in the top 10. Yeah, I do see this guy as a second round guy because of the fact that he doesn't tackle. When it comes to the run, it's all over the place with the run. I mean, his instincts, getting off blocks, the arm length issues for tackling, getting off blocks, that it affects both. It's all worrisome, and then the spirit's not really there either. Now, as a coverage guy, he's great. I think he is a little bit better in off coverage cornerback and staying kind of off coverage, zone coverage, post snap. He's got really great footwork in addition to being fast bred. And he's like got the dancer's footwork thing there with the back pedal where it's so smooth and easy and just gets back into it. He can drive on routes. I think he does a lot of stuff pre-snap where he strikes me as a guy that's doing a lot of the film study of looking at route concepts and understanding what to anticipate and being a little bit of a step ahead in that way, which allows him to just kind of react to things where he's not caught off guard. It feels like post snap at times. Only 18 receptions on 41 targets last year. So did a really good job of just shutting things down to that side when he was targeted, which was not very often. I do come back to the things, though, that you just talked about, which is the two main drivers in this position. Number one, I don't think that the playing in the run is going to improve. It ain't one thing you got to correct. It's like five things you got to correct. Number two, 30.5 inches. I can't remember a corner in history in the NFL that's taken in the first round with 30.5 inches. Now, there hasn't been a lot of corners that run 4.28 either on the other side of it and show his kind of coverage skills on the outside. He's got that makeup speed. That's what that 4.28 with the 1.59 does show you, is that if you beat him, he can get back up over the top. And I didn't see anybody that was able to really stack him on the tape I watched. Nobody that was able to really get over the top because he has that speed that he can come back into and get himself back into the play. But good player. Just those two detriments against his game, I think, end up holding him back just enough to keep him kind of more league average and push him into the second round for me.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree. I certainly wouldn't want him in Seattle with this current regime, with a coach that clearly wants his defensive backs to tackle.
Yeah. This is the kind of guy who's going like, I'll roll with Woolen here. We're fine. Like I think it can be an okay pro. Again, to 173 pounds. So the short arms comes up and tries to tackle a guy 173. You get one of these running backs, 220 Nick Chubb types. How's this guy going to get down Nick Chubb's to the ground? I mean, he's not going to be able to wrap around his calf, much less around his body,
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan already loves running plays towards Woolen. We don't need to give him another corner that he loves running plays towards.
No, we do not. All right. Well, let me get to this. My next one. I think we're going to be in agreement on this one. There's pretty good, strong clarity at the top, at least I think on these corners for the most part. This is my only other second round corner that I have in this draft, and that's going to be Ennis Rakestraw from Missouri, a 5'11", 183-pound cornerback with just long enough arms, a 4.5, 140-yard dash, 1.5, 10-yard split, 10 broad, 7.53 cone, 4.32 shuttle, all just pretty good times. 3 cones, fairly nice. I put my comp for him, Brendan, as a Marcus Peters type.
Yeah, Ennis Rakestraw, Missouri. Let me see, what did I have here? He's got a nice jab at the line of scrimmage to press receivers. I like his footwork at the line of scrimmage as well, because sometimes you have to like shuffle to stay in front of the guy to actually lay your jam on him. Keeps up with routes pretty well in man, even though he's a little bit on the slower side as far as corners go. Really good ball skills, finds the ball in the air really well. I know he only had 4 passes defense last year, but I think his ball skills are really good. His hip flipping is really, really good. He diagnoses plays quickly and accurately, and he's willing to get involved on run support. So there's definitely some good stuff here. Now, I'm a little bit wary of this given how lackluster his testing was, given how he's undersized. Like, you would expect a 5'11", 183-pound corner to do a little bit better than a 4.51. So I don't know if maybe he was just having a bad day or what, but this kind of speed was not what we were told to expect from Rakestraw based on scouting reports. I did notice that. Like, sometimes I'm reading these reports and they're like, oh, this guy's a phenomenal athlete. We're going to talk about that with the Notre Dame corner in a little bit. And then they test and it's like, well, I hope he had a bad day, because that is not a phenomenal athlete to me. I wonder if he'll be able to play outside in the NFL, because he is only 183 pounds. He has long arms, so he's got a chance, but I'm a little bit worried about him being too small for the outside. I feel like his technique as a tackler, he does a little bit of ankle diving. I think that doesn't help. Needs to clean that up a little bit. I don't know. I wasn't super into this one. He's good, but I'm more like third round on this guy. I couldn't quite get into second round with him personally.
Yeah, I think if you're asking him to come up and play press coverage and do that type of thing, that's not going to be his game. This is the Marcus Peters comp, which Marcus Peters to me made of living off coverage and then driving on routes and that type of thing. I don't think Marcus Peters was necessarily the fastest guy either, around the same kind of size. It's that they do have the short area quickness. They do have the change of direction, the stop and start, those type of skills to where they can really, really jump on top of routes in a way that's kind of unique. And, you go to a season, even this last year, 18 receptions allowed on 28 targets, under 200 yards receiving in total on the season. So he wasn't getting beat over the top. He wasn't giving up that on the film that we saw with it. And that's one of those places I come to, Brendan, where I say, okay, that the testing scores have got to factor in, but they can't overweigh everything else. And if I'm not seeing him get on tape, if I'm seeing him be quick on tape, if I'm seeing him not having that be something that necessarily holds him back, then that gives me confidence to believe that it'll carry forward going, into the pro level, where just some guys aren't testers, some guys aren't, that's just not their game. I liked him, I think, a little bit more than you did too as a tackler. I thought he was really willing to get after it. Another place where he reminded me a little bit of Marcus Peters is he had some of that chippiness that Marcus would have off the, what he did, kind of brings a little bit of that spirit with him on that side of things. Don't think he'll be a sensational guy. He does have 100 snaps out of the slot this last year, like you talked about. So there's some versatility potentially in what he could bring you on inside, outside. I think the main issue for me was just that he's stacked up some penalties over the past couple of years. He will get a little bit grabby, and I think he can clean it up. But that's where the main issue came from with me, was just he's going to have to do a little bit less of that. But I thought he's overall going to give you a pretty solid floor. He may not have that high top side. He's in that kind of Terry and Arnold angle of it for me, where it's like, well, you're not getting the high top end. You're going to get this solid floor here of what he provides you, and he's got to go to the right scheme. But if he does, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't quite get warmed up on him. There are a couple of corners that I liked more than him personally.
Understandable. Totally understandable with Rakestraw. Concierge with Nolan. Thank you for another man. $20 donation. Very kind of you, Nolan. Very, very kind of you, brother. He says 2011, Carpenter 25th. 2016, Affetti 31st. 2008, Rashad Penny 27th. 2019, LJ Collier. 2020, Brooks hit at 27th. Just hope he doesn't try reaching depending on the gap between picks. Trading back will close that gap.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if we can call Penny like a. It ended up being a bad pick. I don't know if it was a dumb pick, right? Like you look at some of these others, it's like Affetti was a dumb pick. We were reaching to get a offensive lineman, and yeah, and
I think
we were getting somebody who was clearly like a third or fourth round talent in the first round because we were like, this is what we need.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think the need part you just mentioned. Look back at these picks, Brennan. Let's go through it. Carpenter, 25th. You needed offensive line. You were rebuilding the offensive line. You were hoping he could slide into tackle. If he didn't, you had so much room on the offensive line, you could kick him into guard. Mm-hmm. But you remember on draft day with that Nick Saban sitting there with the running back from Alabama.
Ingram, right?
Ingram. Yeah, he's with Ingram. And it's such a bad look for Saban at the time. Like, hold your poker face, bud, because Carpenter gets announced. Ingram hasn't been picked yet. Saban starts like, it's like, that's your player, dude. That's your lineman. You should like clapping. You now clap. But it spoke to a little bit of Saban's. You could see Saban's opinion. This just speaks to a bit of the reach aspect. Affetti, like you said, we needed a right tackle. We walked into that draft needing a starting right tackle. You take Affetti. With Penny, you worried about Carson's injury history, and you needed to have some insurance for Carson. So it again was still driven as a pick for need. I don't mind Penny. I'm not knocking Penny like, okay, the value's there doing it, but was the pick drawn by the value of Penny, or was it drawn to make sure you could hedge your bet with Chris Carson? And then LJ Collier, I mean, come on. That was the biggest need of any of these, Brendan. Maybe that was even bigger maybe than Affetti, where you're hoping this guy was going to come in day one and give you pass rush. And as I had said too on that previous thing with that Nolan, as you see with it, all these picks, 25 and back. 25, 31, 27, 29. None of these are up at 22 or 23. Where the only way I'm advocating if we go back to 25, it's because we picked up such a great pick on the other side to flip up. It's like you're not just moving back for a little kicker pick. You're getting something substantial to move back that far, which we weren't getting back on any of our trade backs in those drafts, by the way. If I'm not mistaken, Brendan, the most we got back on any of those trades was like a late third on any of those ones that we moved back on.
Yeah, some of the trade backs were good. The Collier trade back was the really bad one. That was the point where it became clear that everybody knew the Seahawks wanted to trade down so badly that they didn't have to offer us a lot to get us to go with it. Yeah. Like, that was the point where it became clear that, okay, we've gone back to this well a few too many times.
Trading for the sake of trading versus actually truly getting value.
Right. So, I will say I don't think Brooks was for need because you still had Wagner and Wright at the time. I think they genuinely just thought Brooks was that good, and I don't think they were right. I think they were incorrect in that assessment, but I don't think that was just like a need.
You don't think they said we're going to be walking into the season with two early 30s two of our starting linebackers in the early 30s, and then we're going to have a high likelihood that one of those two guys, if not both, is going to be injured?
I mean, the thing, Brooks didn't even play that much that rookie year because most of the time you only have two linebackers on the field, and
because KJ stayed healthy.
Yeah, they stayed healthy, but I don't view that as need. Like, we had needs that offseason. I remember looking at the roster that offseason thinking, we have clear needs that are much bigger than linebacker, and yet they decided to go with a linebacker. So I think that was more about them just thinking Brooks was better than he was.
Could have been. I don't know for sure on that one. So that's the thing I do wonder with that one is they were thinking I felt like they're playing a little bit of the likelihood scenario. It's likely week 6 we lose KJ Wright. It's likely Bobby Wagner goes down week 10 at his age with how many games these guys have played. And they just happened to get through that year. Both of them were able to keep it going. But I don't know if they were counting on that being what they thought would be the likelihood. It'd be interesting to see what John thought with that, because you would admit if that was the drive, then it does show to the poorness of moving for need there. If that was the puller, right? That was the lever, then wrong lever to pull.
Right.
Nolan, though, thank you for the donation, and I echo your sentiments on this. You don't want to go back too far unless you're going back so far. You're picking up so many extra picks. But Brendan talked about this. We traded back for the sake of trading back. We can't trade back for the sake of trading back. It's got to be because you're getting the value back. And if the trade partner isn't there, then he isn't there. That's John and he's run into this. We've gotten to look behind the curtains the last couple of years with John. There's been some moments where they've actively heard on certain picks where they're trying to burn up the phone lines and make a trade back, and there's just not the team offering that. They can. I think there's a little bit of the word around with John at times that you can go lowball him a little bit because if he's so eager to move back, and John has to be probably redigging in his toes a little bit on this one to make sure that doesn't happen as he goes forward, and has in probably recent drafts.
Right.
Excuse me, Brendan. Sorry.
Not a problem.
Nolan, very kind of you though on the donation, bro. Very, very kind of you. All right. So that was the end of my second rounders. Let's start tossing through some of your second rounders here.
Yeah, I had a pretty decent amount. I had TJ Tampa in my second round.
Okay.
Did you look at TJ Tampa?
He is the next guy up on my board, but I put him in the third round. So we both like him as the next corner up, just a little lower on him.
I liked him more than Rakestraw personally. I think he's going to be really good in zone. Click and close is really good. He's got the length to get involved in a lot of passes that most human beings would not be able to because he's got those long arms he can stick in there. He keeps up pretty well on vertical routes with his speed. He reads routes and processes them correctly. Not afraid to tackle. He's physical in coverage, but not to an extent where I feel like it's going to get a ton of flags in the NFL. I think he uses physicality correctly. He doesn't have reactive athleticism, which hurts him when he tries to play in man. And his transitions from his back pedal to turning his back are kind of slow. I feel like if you don't put him in man coverage, you'll be okay. So I think that TJ Tampa, as long as you put him in a zone-heavy scheme, which is what we have, is going to be pretty great. So I put him in my second round.
Yeah, I do like him a lot, and I think he's a lock-solid cornerback, Brendan, that has really few, if any, real major flaws to his game. The things I think I would pick at him are more just this and that. He can actually lay some licks, too. He's got a bit of an ability to hit you from the corner position that's kind of unique versus the others that you see. I think that there is a little bit of the lack of speed thing with him that I do feel. I felt like he was with a lot of the off cover stuff that's similar to the guy we just talked about, Rakestraw, but with him, it was just all cover three. And so there were so many snaps with him just dropping to the bail technique, staying over top, and then the receiver having the opportunity to then hit the stop route, hit the in route. Now that's not his fault, but it just made it hard to necessarily put him in that evaluated state as Rakestraw, where there was more of him driving on routes and staying on top. More of both of those things going on rather than just, kind of the one that I was getting with TJ, but he was being asked to do it with a coverage responsibility. So I don't know if he's doing man match, I don't know if he's allowed to come back underneath on that. Sometimes you don't have that responsibility to do it. Don't think he's got much in the way of ball skills. More often than not, I didn't see him getting his head turned around. I thought that the slow developing routes caused him to get in a position to panic and get that old, hook out there to hook the receivers up because he's not trusting his speed, especially, and that he could have a little bit of propensity to run into that at times on the tape. Tackled well enough, solid. I didn't think it was necessarily overwhelming, but just fine. But I just thought there was a little bit, there's still the same lack of speed we talked about with Rakestraw, but just a couple of little extra things with his game that I didn't quite like that he's got to, I think, kind of commit. But he's a natural receiver. He's got a natural feel out there for how to play the position. He's not going to usually give up the big play. Even if he does get beat, he's going to get that penalty, but that's 15-yard penalty in college. So it's like 10-yard penalty, 5-yard penalty. It's like whatever. So smart player also. Good awareness, really smart, good understanding of how to play the position. I like him, Brendan. I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just feel like he'd be a good fit for what we do here.
I understand that. And I can see potentially him being a hawk target. He's got the size. He certainly can tackle well enough, good arm length. You don't have to question those things on him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll keep it moving here. And I did have him at the top of my third round. Did you have any other second round corners?
I actually had, I think, two more.
Okay.
First guy, this is kind of one of my crushes, Mike Sainristil.
Okay.
Sainristil of Michigan.
The CEO.
Right. So this guy is probably going to be a slot in the NFL because he is a little bit undersized. Probably going to be one of those nickel corners. But this is the guy that, well, a couple interesting things about him. So first of all, he was one of the guys for that Michigan defense who was considered a leader. He was the guy who would be calling out route combos and plays from the offenses they would play. And he was really good at it. Like even in the national title game against one of the best offenses in the country, he was calling stuff out and really frustrating that Washington offense. And the receivers on Washington have talked about how he was calling out their plays pre-snap. So you're bringing that to the table. He moved to cornerback from wide receiver 2 years ago. He has only been playing cornerback for 2 years. So even though he's 23, I feel like he's going to get exponentially better. I think that's one of the things that I look for with these guys who just made the position move. 40-inch vert, 10-foot, 11-inch broad. So he's very explosive. He's not the fastest, but he's very explosive. High IQ. He's a weapon blitzing off the edge as well. He's one of the best blitzing corners in this class. Very good ball skills. Had 6 interceptions last year. Now, he's not reactive enough to hang in man coverage reliably. And bigger receivers are going to have their way with him because he's 5'9", 182. But I like this guy more than most, I think, because of that cerebral element and that growth that he can have over the next couple of years because he just started playing corner.
Yeah, Brendan, I do like him a lot. I put him into my 3rd round range of it. So again, we're not far off in our assessment of it. The thing you mentioned about that 2 years too is that what's interesting there is it's 2 years of solid back-to-back production, including great production this past year. So it's not 2 years of a guy changing positions and like struggling to find himself, but he's been able to hit the ground running in many ways right from the jump. They had a cornerback pre-draft thing that we were making reference to this, where all these cornerbacks got together to train together, and within like 24 hours, the players were calling him the CEO. He is a real potential leader on your defense and a guy that can help in that capacity for what it brings, on top of being a baller and a playmaker that is very rare to get from the slot. It's not easy to be a high pick guy from that area of things. You just don't get the opportunity. It's too easy for slot receivers to create really easy, fast separation. And so him doing that, it's legitimate. And you see it on some of those picks where he is truly jumping the route like a former receiver that he is. So this guy's got some sensational upside to his game. I think he also mitigates his problems, Brendan. The issues of being undersized and short, where he does a great job of getting himself really draped into the receiver on the routes and make sure he's always close so that when the ball arrives, he's there to be in a position to do something about it. And then he can use things like his 40-inch vertical leap, where he might have a receiver taller than him, but with that explosive leaping ability, find a way to get up there and impact the play. So he does a good job to fit around those little bit of detriments, even though you get away with being this size in the slot, Brendan. But I love his upside. True, really nice upside here to be a guy that could be a top 5 slot in this league. And understandable why you might put that guy into that 2nd round range because of it.
Yeah, slot receivers becoming more and more important as the years go by.
We just drafted one in the 1st round last year, so it's definitely starting to gain some traction on that side of things. All right, let's keep it moving on down here. And who's your last guy in the 2nd round?
I probably like this guy more than most, Max Melton. I'm definitely intrigued by, not necessarily personally, because I think he'll be a little bit better as a man corner. But I do think that Max Melton will make somebody very happy somewhere, maybe not here. So Rutgers, yes, he is related to Bo Melton. They're brothers, I believe. They are in the same family. For anybody who's wondering, he's got length. He's got 32 and an 1/8 inch arms, which in this class is actually good. I know some years you've got these corners that have 40-inch arms. Not so much this year, like you were saying.
Yeah.
But he had a great combine. He's a great athlete, very explosive. Good ball production the last 2 years, 16 passes defensed, 5 interceptions, really good in run support. He has the reactive athletic abilities to perform well in man, also has the field awareness to do zone. He's pretty good at pressing at the line of scrimmage. High motor, should be able to play inside and outside. I think sometimes he goes a little overboard with the aggression. He can get a little over the top with his physicality. Like sometimes he'll be trying to press so hard he just ends up getting completely toasted at the line if he misses. His hip transitions are a little bit awkward. His ball skills do occasionally fade in and out. So I like him a lot. I think he's a 2nd rounder to somebody, not necessarily here, because I think he'll be really good in man, but I like him a lot.
Yeah, he just kind of moves in general, doesn't he, Brennan? Like you want an outside corner to move. Feels like a really great athlete for the position right off the gate. Easy back pedal. He's got some the twitchiness to his testing times is what you see from him on the field. He's willing to be violent and come up and take a shot as far as that goes, which stood out to me. I did feel like his tackling was otherwise shaky. He had a 27% missed tackle rate on the year, which is I think about the high. It was about the highest I saw from any of the cornerbacks in this class.
Huh.
So
I did not see that. I'm gonna have to look into that.
yeah, a bit of a guy that a little bit as well with only gave up the 24 receptions, 252 yards, did give up 4 touchdowns. I do think he's best being in zone and being allowed to kind of freelance and read the quarterback's eyes and work off of that a little bit, because there are times where he can show some upside to being able to jump routes and be kind of, I don't want to say a pick machine, but when he can really lock in and trust that stuff with his potential explosiveness and twitch, there is that kind of tantalizing upside there to him. I just felt like there was a little bit more rough road there with him to go through, Brendan, to get to that stage of things, and it knocked him and dinged him down for me just a little bit because of it.
Yeah, okay, I can understand that. There's some rawness there for sure, but I think the talent is very appealing.
Can't deny the talent. The 41-inch vert, 11.4 broad. I mean, that's on a 4.39, and he's not super tiny on the arm, so he's got enough arm length on the outside. It's fine. Just felt like there were some rough roads you had to clear away, clear some brush away, clear a little debris, maybe cut a log off the middle of the road, and then he'll be fine. But I think that's going to take him a while to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your number? Well, let me see if it's my next guy in the third round. I've got Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia was my second guy.
Yeah, he is a third round guy for me. I did have a couple guys I liked a little bit more, but I do put Lassiter in the third. Georgia, pretty decent size, had a really good 3-cone, 6'6" so good change of direction skills. No picks over the last 2 years, 12 passes defensed. Versatile enough to play outside and inside in the NFL. Has proven himself in man and zone. So he's flexible, right? He can play a lot of different roles potentially in the NFL. He moves really smoothly. He's not afraid to get physical and make tackles. I like his change of direction, and his football IQ is good. I do wonder if he's a little bit lean to be an outside corner successfully. He also has shorter arms, sub 31.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have upper level speed to keep up with the speedster receivers. I feel like his eyes get stuck in the backfield sometimes. Like he starts watching what's going on in the backfield and then he gets beat over the top. Mediocre ball production as well. So a lot of question marks for me. I couldn't quite circle the wagons here. The aggregate has him as a high second round pick. I put him in the third.
Yeah, I definitely liked him a little bit more, Brendan. One of the best last year for the production as far as targets to catches, only 15 catches for 136 yards given up last year. That was down from 400 given up the previous year. So he really took some steps forward, I thought, this year in improving in that realm of things, which when I see that improvement, it just gets me more encouraged, especially a guy playing the SEC where there's no real place to go out there and hide. Not much ball skills, and he can get grabby. The speed thing is true here with him, Brennan, at 4.5, where it's, sometimes he gets worried about that whole, maybe I can't stay with this guy thing. I think he's a grade A, really strong run defender in addition to being a really good cover man. I think just this is a tough, hard-nosed cornerback. He's got versatility to play either man or zone, smooth back pedal, probably at his best in press, but I think he can give you that off coverage stuff too as well. So I think for this guy, I raised him maybe a little bit more than you because I saw just a bit more of that ability to fit to the versatility to what the Seahawks would want. Really liked how he tackled, really liked how he improved his final year in college. The short arms are valid. 30, almost 31-inch arms are definitely a little bit of a problem, but it didn't seem to hold him back at the college level. And outstanding production last year, not necessarily from a pick standpoint, but just in, what he did on the field all in every other realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
Kevin Mullen, thank you for another $10 donation. Kevin, you are awesome, brother. I really do appreciate you. You and Nolan killing it tonight. He says, if we draft Penix, wouldn't it make sense to draft for a right tackle to protect his blind side, assuming Lucas is not ready? With this deep O-line draft, shouldn't Rosengarten be in play? F the Niners. Yes, indeed. F the Niners. We probably should get that in every show at least once, Kevin. That would be probably proper. But if we draft Penix, would it make sense to draft a right tackle to protect his blind side if Lucas isn't ready, Brendan? So, okay, let's go through this. Kevin, we're going to run through this here. We got Seahawks pick at 16. Penix falls. They pick Penix at 16. They come back around to the third round, and Rosengarten is there. Is that, in essence, very likely to be the pick that you lean to making at that point, even going beyond the value-based model that we talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're leaning a little more to need at that point because you have a guy in Grub who goes, I know what I got in this guy. This will be good. He's played with this quarterback. Is that the next corresponding pick to make on that?
The problem is you don't know what you currently have. You might have a really good right tackle. You don't know. And you already signed your depth right tackle, and he's a pretty good one and one that you've invested a pretty good amount of money into. This is the frustrating thing about this offseason as it regards to the right tackle spot. We don't know where we're at.
Well, let's run this though. Lucas is not going to be ready to the start of the season. You do have Fant. So that's the key part of his question, I think, is that Lucas is not ready.
Well, then if that's the case, then I think, yeah, you probably do, because you're thinking about long-term, because if you draft Penix, you're planning on him being your quarterback for the next 15 years. So you need to give him a right tackle that's going to be there for a good chunk of that time. And at that point, I think you have to start saying Lucas just isn't going to make it past his rookie deal because he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, there does have to come a point here, Kevin, where we got to call the ball on Lucas and not counting on him. It doesn't mean we have to throw him away. It just means that we have to start to build in a little bit more. And while I like George Fant as an insurance policy, I don't know if it's the best item for the long term at that point. And getting Penix, the big thing that I've always harped on, if you're going to get Penix, the next corresponding thing you need to drift towards is making sure your offensive line is on point and ready to go. So there'd be a heavy draw for me to go that route with it too, Kevin. If not right tackle, then of course left guard. Something to the offensive line would be the next move to go and make. So one way or another, that's what you got to do on the other end of it with Penix to me. But Rosengarten would certainly be very interesting. He did a good job for Penix out at UW in that role, essentially as the blindside protector there for the lefty.
Yeah. And that's another reason why, the whole lefty thing in the NFL with quarterbacks, like some people, there is a legitimate reason why teams shy away from them. It just reverses everything. I think some people get the sense that it's just like some weird random quirk that everybody has where they don't like left-handed quarterbacks. No, it actually makes you do everything backwards. And some teams are very comfortable with their right-handed quarterbacks.
Yeah. And Brendan's right. You have to flip everybody around on what they're doing a bit. And that can be a little bit like playing opposite handed sometimes for the rest of the unit. On top of the fact the ball spins different out of their hand, you got to get used to that, because it's coming opposite and receivers are used to it spinning the other way. But yeah, well thought out there, Kevin. I think that's definitely the next move you're making if you're making that one. Otherwise, you're going to lead Penix down the road of potential ruin there if you don't address it in a strong major way at that point. I'm not so sure Rosengarten's going to be there. And I will say this last point on this, Kevin, is just that the tackles to me in this draft and the guards in this draft are not quite as strong as at first blush. And that we could get ourselves into that third round range, late third round, and there is nobody there worthy to be picked at that point, especially versus other positions, which will have much higher value by that point. So that's maybe something to consider along those lines here too. So you'd have to do it.
Yeah, just keep trading down until you have every pick in the bottom half of the fifth round. Just slowly. It's like the paper clip. You trade the paper clip for something and eventually you work your way up to a house. That's what we're going to do.
That's right. John working his mastery, Brendan, his magicianship. All right, well, let's keep moving. We got a ton of corners here to get through, and thank you guys for so much on your support on the channel, Kevin. Very, very kind of you, brother.
Thank you, Kevin.
Next guy I've got up here on my list is the big dog, the big kid out of Oregon, Kyrie Jackson, 6'3", 195-pound corner, almost 33-inch long arms, ran a 4.5 40, 1.5 10-yard split. Brendan at 6'3", 195. That's a great 10-yard split.
Yeah, Pete would have liked this guy. Pete would have really been into this one.
Pete would have been. My comp for him is Brandon Browner, but not quite as mean or angry, nor the ball skills. Does that track for you?
That's pretty good. Only 1 year of big production last year for Oregon. I think he was a transfer from, I want to say, Alabama, and he didn't do anything there.
That's right.
Right. So he's big. physical, very disruptive at the point of catch, really good reading the play and watching it develop in zone, just hanging back in zone, let him face the line of scrimmage. He's going to do good stuff. Plays the ball well, gives effort when tackling. Some of the issues he has, his change of direction is kind of slow, awkward. Only 1 year of production, so we don't have a big sample size to go on here. Will probably get flagged for physical play in the NFL. Probably can't hang with quicker receivers in man, and he doesn't have the strength you would prefer. Now, he is 6'4", or 6'3" on your list. On my list, he's 6'4". I don't know what's true or not. But either way, he can add
What's
weight.
reality?
Yeah.
He might be 6'4". I might have that as an older one there. So.
Yeah, he could add weight if he needs to. So under Pete Carroll, this would have been a perfect corner to get, and Mike Macdonald might like him too. So Kyrie Jackson, I'd say third rounder, maybe even early third. I like this guy.
He's an early third for me too, Brendan. I did like him a lot as well. And I think your points about both being a Pete and Macdonald kind of cat, that very well could be the case here. I thought he showed some versatility, but and kind of rarely so for being a 6'3", 6'4" guy that can actually play some man coverage situations. Most of the time, you're just keeping those guys in zone off coverage. We're going to talk about one guy potentially out of Arizona State that's this way, where you're just trying to keep them in a position of having them extra time to flip their hips and roll to get to the go routes and still being able to jump stuff underneath if they have the time to jump stuff underneath if they see it. He showed a little bit of man coverage ability there at Oregon, though zone was mainly I think what he was playing. Speed's not there. What you're not going to get is pretty straightforward. You're not going to get not a lot of top end speed. Brendan talked about the flipping the hips. This is the problem you get with a 6'3", 6 foot corner, that there's really no way to get around it. There's some upside to what they give you, like specifically the length and ability to get the balls in short spaces that other smaller corners can't get to. But the flipping the hips is always going to be a bit of a problematic spot for those guys that are just bigger corners. He doesn't have really anything as far as ball skills go to me as well. I thought he's got, I think he had 2 picks this last year. One was an overthrow and one was a tip. So he's not doing anything on that side of it. I thought he was relentless though as a run defender, which is what would be, I think, very appealing to both Carroll and Macdonald, being this is a bigger guy that plays like a bigger guy on the outside. And that's also a nice part of his game. Yeah.
It was 3 interceptions actually.
Was it 3? My bad.
Yeah, I had 3.
I robbed him of 1.
Mm-hmm. But I'm a fan.
Good player. Next we got on the list here is a kid for me out of TCU in my third round as I go down. This is a guy right around the third round for me. Josh Newton out of TCU. TCU always seems to kick out 1 corner a year from their program minimum to the pros. 5'11", 190, a little bit short arms, 31 1/8 inch, 4'5", 140, 155, 10-yard split. Okay testing numbers all the way along the line. Nothing eye-popping in them, Brennan. What were your thoughts on Josh Newton? Did you also see him as third rounder, or I got him a little high for you?
I had him in my late third round, yes. Okay. Really flexible across schemes and positions. I think he can play man. I think he can play zone. I think he can play inside. I think he can play outside. He's got lateral agility and quickness to hit press at the line as well. Although, with his arms being kind of short, I don't know if he'll be able to press in the NFL. He's very explosive on his click and close. He reads routes and handles them really well when he's in zone. And I think his flexibility will work in the NFL for the most part. I think that he will be able to continue to be somebody who can play zone and man pretty well. His ball skills are pretty good. He's got 21 passes defensed over the last 2 years. Now, he is a little bit slower. He is going to struggle a little bit on 9 routes. He's not going to keep up as well as you would like. He doesn't flip his hips all that well, and he's, a little bit short-armed. So I think his mediocre testing got people to sleep on him a little bit, and I understand that. I think there's just a lot Newton brings to the table that's good, regardless of him being a mediocre athlete. So I would say late first, yeah.
I felt like he ran on the field like a 4.4 guy, even though he tested like a 4.5 guy.
Yeah, I said late first. That's a pretty big difference from what I actually have. Late third, my bad.
Oh, no, you're good. I know what you meant. But are you buying that? What I'm selling on that? I felt like he's 4.4 in the field and 4.
Yeah. I could go for that, I guess. I'm trying to remember. I've watched so much cornerback tape.
I know they 36 guys blend together, man. What are you gonna do? So it does happen. I like him a lot. I think he's just a solid all around cornerback prospect. Maybe not a ton of sizzle here with this guy, but I think that he's pretty ready to come in and help your program out, even if it's just to kind of come in as a rotational corner, start a couple games over the course of the season. He can do both the off coverage and press stuff. So you give a little bit of the versatility with him. I didn't see him hardly ever tested in the games I watched, Brendan. Nobody was really willing to go his way. He allowed less than 50% of the balls thrown his way to be completed, which stands out. A lot of these guys are well over 50%, even the guys that don't give up a lot of catches. So very rarely tested. When he was, you had a hard time completing the ball on him. Another guy with no ball skills really to speak of on the outside. So he's not giving you any kind of upside on that. I thought he played the run well enough for me, strong enough. It was about, be about an average rate for a prospect coming out, which is, neither plus nor minus on him. So I just thought he could be a guy that with his skill set, Brendan, might round out into being a league average corner. And when I look at the third round, that's kind of my basis there is, can this guy round out to being a league average corner with his upside? And is there a likelihood he's going to hit that upside? And if the answer is yes and yes, I'll kind of put him into that range.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
Another guy here in my mini third rounders, Brendan, I got a lot of them. Is a kid out of Florida State, Renardo Green.
Yes, I definitely looked at him as well. And I generally agree with your sentiment. I had him in my third round as well.
Real good corner here. Real fun corner here. Another short arm guy. This is that thing I was telling you too, where you said you're coming from those long arms. It's like you're looking at all these 31s, you're going, damn. Yeah. But he's got the speed, right? He's got the quickness. He's got the explosiveness.
Yeah, he's flexible across man and zone. He played both at Florida State. Outside or slot, press or off. He can do it all. He is super flexible. That alone gives you value. Mm-hmm. You can put him in any scheme, in any position, and I think he'll find a way. He's good at reading and diagnosing plays. He's got good click and close, good tackler, good blitzer, explosive all-around athlete, had a really big broad jump. Now, I think he will draw some flags in the NFL the way he's currently playing.
Mm-hmm.
Only one interception the last 2 years is notable. He did have 13 passes defense last year, though, so he does have ball skills. And he's a little too overly energetic with his press at times, I think.
Yeah.
But that can be fixed, right? Like, that's all fixable.
Yeah.
A good coach gets in there and takes care of it. So really well-rounded. I think he has a chance to do a little bit of everything. So give me him in the third round all day.
Yeah, he's a good play, another fun player in the third round for me. It just, I to your point in the grabbing, Brendan and I wrote down, he grabs like a toddler trying to stay attached to his mother on the move, and he is definitely, that part's there. And the aggressive part you talked about, double moves, long developing routes, you can get him with this stuff because he wants to be so aggressive. But as you also said, and I agree that it's, you like the aggressiveness. You can tell them to back up a little bit on that. You can tell them to dial it back at times. Sometimes it's hard on to get guys to go and get them to be in that mentality and mindset. So I just loved his aggressiveness and coverage. I think it's going to overall work. He is better in man than zone. So you want to put him in man with that aggressiveness. You got to clean up the grabbiness. That's for sure. I really thought he was a gnarly tackler, Brendan. He will twist you in half. He will cut you down to the ground. I saw him over and over again playing really well against the run, and it stood out to me in this class on that side of it. So there's some things to clean up in his game. Very good patience at the line of scrimmage. Doesn't open the door to his hips too early. Knows he can trust his quicks and his speed. That stuff was legit to me on the football field. When you've got that confidence to know you can run with anybody, it just lets you be kind of aggressive like that. And I also thought he has some good late hands. Not a lot of picks, but shows some upside in his ability to get interceptions at the next level because he can turn back, look, find the ball, get the hands up late, and make a pick. He's got a bit of that ability to him. Next up in the third round for me, another one here, Brendan, out of Ole Miss. And this is going to be DeAndre Prince, a 6'3", 183-pound cornerback. Hey, have you guys heard this yet before so far on the show? He's got some short arms, 30 3/4 inch arms, but he ran a blazing 4.38 and an even more blazing 1.47 10-yard split. Brendan, where you at on DeAndre Prince?
Well, I couldn't really circle the wagons around this one all that much. The speed's great. The acceleration's incredible. I like the way he plays the run. He's not afraid, although I do think he's overly aggressive. I do think he puts himself out of position a lot. He's good in zone. He just kind of waits for the play to develop and then makes his read based on what he sees. He's aggressive at swiping at the receiver's hands to dislodge the ball. His speed and acceleration are unimpeachable. but his press is inconsistent. He gives up a lot of cushion, and it feels like his instincts haven't really developed yet. I don't get the sense that he's a very comfortable player doing cornerback stuff. So I was a little bit more, I think, in the 5th round with this guy. I just wasn't convinced that he was ever going to grow past this stage where he's a raw prospect, because he's been starting for years with Mississippi.
3-year starter.
Yeah. So I don't know. I couldn't really get into this one. The speed's appealing, but I couldn't really get past like the 5th round with him.
Yeah, I definitely liked him a little bit more. He is a wispy cornerback at 183 and 6 feet tall. But the 3-year starter, he's played in a variety of different looks, pre-snap coverage looks all across the board just throughout a game. And he shows fluidity to me within all of them. Very adept at staying on top of routes, only targeted about 3 times a game last year, which is not much at all. Yeah, he's on the smallish side. He's not going to be a ferocious tackler, but he'll do what he's got to do in that area of his game. I thought his ball skills, well, they're not zero, but they're definitely below average. I do think that he does a great job of utilizing that speed and quickness to make him a better football player. You know, he's coming up on let's say, you know, a screenplay, and the lineman's trying to get up there to lay the blocks, and his speed will speed him around that block to the ball carrier where other players might get hung up because they're not that quick. And to me, he did that over and over at times on tape when coming up and helping up as a tackler, where he's utilizing that speed in a way where it's getting on top of ball carriers before they can be prepared for it to arrive, because he's just so sudden. There were times I watch him, it just felt like you're watching a blur on the football field that was very unique for him. Maybe it's as much that 1-4-7 10-yard split where it's just he can cover a short space of ground there so quickly, that just stood out to me. And I thought, again, overall fairly complete, just like that particular little aspect of his game.
Okay.
Moving right along here through my 3rd round, I had Melton was also the other guy in my 3rd round. And then this guy, who is a guy that didn't test through this process. I think he was dealing with a bit of an injury, if I'm not mistaken. The kid out of Tennessee, a guy that I liked really early on in the process, Kamal Haddon, 6'1", 196 corner, another short arm, 30 7/8 inch cornerback here.
I definitely had him. Let me take it. Yeah, I did have him. Yeah, this is another one. It looks like I wasn't too excited by. Let me take a look at what I wrote down here. Yeah, short arms, but he does have a longer frame. Missed a lot of 2023. He's got the size to play outside. He's good in press man, although he probably won't be able to press in the NFL because his arms are too short. Showed the ability to stick with his man throughout a route, so good in man coverage. Not afraid to track deep balls, and he's stronger than the typical corner, is what I wrote. But he doesn't have the speed. I'm a little worried about the speed, maybe crippling his ability to play man coverage in the NFL. Not a good tackler, will probably attract flags because he's grabby. And the injury he suffered is non-trivial. So to me, I kind of look at him, and with so many corners in this draft, why am I going to take one that's still getting over a pretty serious injury when I can go get so many of the others? So I ended up putting him down in like the 5th round as well, actually.
Yeah, it's certainly going to make you dodgy when you don't have the testing numbers to fall back on with him here, and we just don't. I like the speed and the quickness a little more than you did on the tape, as far as thinking it was going to hold up. And I did think, though, that the season was cut short. He had just 7 games played this year. He had 3 interceptions in those 7 games. He only gave up 12 receptions on 96 yards in those 7 games. So the tape that was out there, he was really good on. There is a little bit of an issue with the penalties and getting grabby, which could be an indicator of the fact maybe not the speed stuff isn't there as much. I thought he had a little bit of a peanut Tillman punch at times, where I think he offers maybe some upside and be able to do that at the pro level, where he seems pretty fluid with it. Just like his flip hip, the way he could flip his hips, the way he could stop and start and change direction with routes. It just kept him in the back hip pocket a lot of times in watching the game tape I saw from him. And again, I think I trusted a little bit more of the quickness and speed to go along with that athleticism that he brings to feel like this is going to hold up at the pro level. The shoulder injury's got to check out with the meds, Brendan. No doubt about that. And you've got to make sure that that's not going to be a long-term issue. But I did like the tape overall and what I saw from him, and a pretty good run defender as well. He gets after it in that part of his game.
Okay, I wasn't too high on the tackling personally, but I was going off tape. I usually don't check like the missed tackle rate with a lot of these guys, which maybe I should start doing, because sometimes, you know, what you see in a limited sample size can throw you off the bigger picture.
That's kind of why I lean to it a little bit at times with it, just to check on that. And it's just there for that snapshot, because some games you're not going to get a chance to see that as much, especially if they're not tested or put in a position tackle. Especially if they don't like playing the run game much, because then you're like, well, I'm not seeing him in a position to tackle at all here, so I don't know what to go off of.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last of my third round guys. Do you have any other third round guys on your list?
I believe I do. Give me 1 second here. So I think I had Chris Abrams-Drain in my third round.
Okay.
Yes, Chris Abrams-Drain of Missouri, the other Missouri corner, as it were. 179, so a little bit on the smaller side. Pretty decent testing. Lot of plays made on the ball. He's got great ball skills. 27 passes defensed over the last 2 years, more than one a game. He was an outside and slot corner in college, so he played inside and outside a lot. So if he has to move inside in the NFL because he's small, he's ready for it. His press at the line of scrimmage has been solid. He's intelligent in zone. He diagnoses plays at a really high level. He's willing as a tackler. He's just not very good, I feel like. So maybe it's something that can get better, but he is small, so maybe not. He's probably going to be slot only in the NFL because of his size, and his reactive athletic abilities aren't that good. I think like his speed is fine, but reactive athleticism is a little bit of a struggle. But I think what is there is enough to be like a late third round pick.
Yeah, I wasn't quite as high on Drain. I think what I came to was the conundrum you just talked about, where I don't know if the 179 that he came in and weighed at the combine, Brendan, I don't think that's what he played at. I think he played at more like about 170 or maybe even 165. And I just don't trust cornerbacks down at that weight, because he was so thinly. I mean, bring up a picture of him, man. I mean, he doesn't look like 180 if you bring him up on a shot. It's just he's very thin, which is part of why he gets such speed and quickness, is he's so light to be able to do it. And I do like him. Short area quickness, played well as an outside corner when he was asked to do it. Like you said, he did good in the slot too when he was asked to do it. He's a really guy who's got a lot of patience, maybe because he can trust that speed, where it's just he will slowly envelop you in a route like a cloud in the sky, where it's just suddenly he's taking over the sky and you're like, wow, he just kind of covered that guy. Whereas other guys are snappy in coverage, right, Brendan, where they'll, like you said, the click and hitch where they blah, 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 and they're jumping right on you. You can really feel the moment they're jumping into you in the route and getting you covered. He just kind of does it naturally, which stood out to me as his little sort of special skill he brought from that perspective of things. But you take the smaller arms, if he is 170 pounds, if that's 31-inch arms on that kind of build, I didn't like the tackling ability. And you did mention, I do believe that, he's going to probably have to move to the slot. And I agree with you on that. He's got to move to the slot. So now we come back around. Can he tackle out of the slot at 170 pounds consistently? Can he play like a linebacker at 170 pounds consistently? I don't think he can. I could be wrong on that. He didn't play at the lighter, but he just felt lighter. And especially when it came to tackling, he'd come on and hit running backs. And it's that thing where, you give up 30, 40 pounds to a guy and you just kind of boom, you're right. There's nothing you can really do. You're not bringing the sand in the pants to be able to come up and withstand that. And that's why I dropped him down as far as I did, to more of like a 6th round range, because I think he's a man caught in between two worlds, who's got a lot of ability, but he's caught in between two different worlds. Between two different worlds.
Yeah, I could definitely see some part of that, but I think what is there is pretty appealing and intriguing for me.
Understood. He certainly is very fast, very quick.
All right. I have another one, and we're going to have a big disagreement on this one. This is one of my sleepers.
Get it.
This is the biggest one we've had so far, because I really liked what I saw with Nehemiah Pritchett of Auburn.
Oh, Nehemiah Pritchett. Okay. He's growing on me the last day, man. I've been going back and watching the tape a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So he's good in press. His jabs are really good in press. He's got great long speed, which allows him to hang with fast receivers. He ran a 4.36 40, 1.49 10-yard split. He's aggressive and strong at the point of catch. Change of direction is also really good. Usually doesn't give up separation because he does use that speed well. I think he'll be good in zone also because he reads the play so well. He does need to improve as a run defender and tackler. I suspect he needs to put on a little bit of weight because he's 6 feet tall, but 190 pounds. So he's got room to add a little bit of weight if he needs to. And he's a little tentative on his click and close, but I feel like that's something that can be learned. I'm thinking about that scene in Man on Fire where Denzel's trying to teach the girl how to, dive into the water when they hear the starting gun go off. I feel like that's something that can be taught. I could be wrong. It doesn't always get taught, but I think he's a little tentative there. But I think there's a lot of potential here. I think he's got a few rough edges you can smooth out. He's kind of one of my sleepers. I did end up putting him in my third.
Yeah, I didn't hate his game, so I want to say that I've put him into the 5th round, Brendan. So I definitely don't have him quite where you have him. But he's a really intriguing player because of the speed, 149, 10-yard split, a senior. He's played a lot of football. I mean, I think he's been a 4-year starter. I think he's improved every single year of college that he's played. He has a lot of the pure skills you want from the position, really sure footwork, quick turning hips, the plus speed that you've got moving in any direction. I mean, it's all there. Part of what was tough on his game, which I wasn't sure of, which I don't know if it's the Auburn teaching technique way that they were asking their do it, but he would play the off corner. He'd play off corner coverage, Brennan. And then I kept watching him not just bail drop to depth, but it was like he was sprinting to depth at times. And so there wasn't a lot of the tape of watching him actually reacting to what's happening in the route. It's just like he's been told, get back there. Just get back there. And it made it a little bit harder in the overall evaluation for him. Now, here's the thing I came back to, though, is 12 receptions given up on 26 targets for 134 yards last year. So he wasn't giving up a lot of catches despite being asked to do that. But it made it a little bit tougher because there were so many of those snaps that I was watching over and over again in his evaluation with the tape I had available to me. The tackling I thought was a mixed bag. He'll do it if you absolutely force him to do it. But the want, the will, I'm going to go do this, I didn't think it was as much there. I don't think there's a lot of ball skills either on that side of it and what he's going to offer you. So a guy that has some potential to start that you can find maybe even in the 5th round to me, I could say that, Brennan. I think that he's got at least the arm length size and build there, but I do think there's some things you have to clean up in his game. To your point, can you clean it up? Yeah, you can. I mean, show me more in those off coverage looks, you driving on the ball. Some of this is what I wasn't able to see on his tape more than what was bad on his tape, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I can dig that. He's one of my sleepers. He's one of my guys.
Understandable. He's a good player. And these cornerbacks were all in these areas really good. Even this guy in a typical draft, Brendan, would be an easy third, probably.
Yeah, I don't think I had any other 3rd rounders.
All right. Well, let's roll our way into the 4th rounder with my top guy, another pure as the driven snow-covered corner, Brendan. They don't come more pure covered corner than this. Dwight McGlothern out of Arkansas, 6'2", 185. Oh, look that, folks. We got another short arm warrior, 30.5 inches, this man. Mm-hmm. But likewise, he's got that speed. They got the short arms, but hey, at least they got the wheels. 4.47, 1.5, 10-yard split. The man can move. Wasn't super explosive on the jumping, Brendan.
No, he cannot jump. He can move, but he can't jump.
He can jump. He's getting a couple inches off the ground, but he was an interesting corner for me. Kind of to me, Brendan, a little bit of a night and day on the sides of his game for me, right? Where it's bright, and where it's dark, it's dark.
Yeah, he's got size, so he's got a chance to play on the outside, although there are a couple other reasons why maybe he won't be able to. He's got a lot of ball production, 7 picks over the last 2 years, 16 passes defensed. Click and close is good. And I know I always say click and close, and people in the chat are getting sick of me saying that, but it's a really important skill for these cornerbacks. They need to be able to click and close.
Yep, it's absolutely true, man. It's the standard issue, especially if you're having a guy playing off coverage. That's one of the main things you're going to call upon wondering, because he'll stay on top because he's being given a cheat to stay on top prior to the snap. But can he get down on the route after the snap?
He reads the quarterback's eyes well. Good at reading quarterback's eyes. Now, he does pick up a lot of penalties. I think he was one of the more penalized corners last year. Struggles to press. Not really good in press. And he won't probably be asked to do it when he's in the NFL because he has short arms. Not super interested on running plays. Gets beat over the top. And he has no explosion in his lower body at all. So I think he's a pretty reasonable fit for a cover 3 zone scheme. I don't see too much else here. I'm more like 5th round on him, but not too far away from where you are.
Yeah, I think he's got a little more hope for getting to I think he can run a little bit more of a press man situation at times, because he just has there's moments in watching him to me, Brendan, where he will run the route as good as the receiver. And it gets him in trouble for that aggressiveness. It gets him in trouble with the grabbiness you just talked about. because he's trying so hard to get on top of that route to go make a play on the ball and go get himself a pick that everything else doesn't kind of matter and gets sort of to the background, including using, the right technique and staying patient with the route. It just becomes a little bit of an impatience in his playing of the route. A little bit below average, I thought, as a run defender. I did just think if you put him in the right scheme, clean up the grabbiness, he's not going to have a huge top end side, but okay, he gets you to a league average cornerback who can get you a lot of picks every year or get you a collection of picks every year. And that maybe there's at least value into that, not a clean prospect, but that what he gives you will work, but it's got to go to the right scheme, Brendan. I think you got to go to something that's aggressive, something that's not asking him to cover for like a long period of time, and something that allows him to be aggressive too, while mitigating those problems with the holds.
Okay.
Upo, thank you for the $10 donation. Upo, I appreciate you for that. It's good to see you in the house too. Says, you guys remember a year when so many draft eligible players, especially cornerbacks and defensive linemen, regressed from the previous year? Throw in 2 of the top 3 quarterbacks in that group too.
Yeah, I have noticed that a lot of players played better in 2022 than 2023. Is the reason why because of NIL money making these guys stay longer than they normally would have? In the past, they would have the breakout year and then just go to the NFL. Now they have the breakout year and they're like, well, let me get some of this NIL money first. And then they're not as able to replicate the success of that breakout year.
I think you could be onto something. Just to keep taking your thought process further on this, you're inferring it, I think, a little bit. So let's just speak about it. You come back and get the NIL money after your breakout year, and you kind of like, I'm fat and happy I did it. And maybe you don't have your foot on the gas as hard.
Yeah. And maybe, fate conspired in your favor during that breakout year in a way that it just doesn't. Especially if you're playing a position like cornerback, where the difference between you having a monster statistical season and having a pedestrian one is you played that one game against that one quarterback who just kept throwing it right to you. Or you played, those 2 games where a couple of balls got tipped and landed in your hands. Like, cornerback production tends to be pretty fluky from year to year. It's not a consistent flow of like, I'm going to get 6 interceptions every year. No, it's like I got 10 interceptions this year. This year I got like 2. This year I got like 8. This year I got 1. So combination.
Yeah. I think it's certainly certain positions like that. That's the case, Brendan. I think there's other ones, to Upo's point, where you see it from the edge class. We saw it from some of the middle linebackers that we talked about, who you thought this guy was going to be here, and then he went back. And then a lot of the guys that had to go back to college this year, I think at times just had kind of underwhelming prior years from their last year. I think if I was pressed to give an answer on this, Upo, I think it does clearly just come down to everyone reacts differently to getting a lot of money. And when you're a young man at 18, 19 years old, and somebody's giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars suddenly, it's hard to always react in the mature way of, okay, let me put my 100,000 in the bank and get back in the gym. And I'm going to get up at 5 a.m, right? We're going to get our 2 a days on the jet. Like, it's easy for guys like you and me to sit here and be like, that's what you should do. Is it your commitment? Do you love the game? But it's also like human nature is, I'm an 18-year-old guy who's got a couple $100,000. Like, we're going to go have some fun, and fun means less working. Less working means not as good a player the next year. So I think it is a factor, Upo, but I think this is also a good thing at the end of the day, because now when you used to have that question when you came into a draft about a player about whether or not he would react poorly to once he did get paid, now you can say, well, we've seen him get paid. We know how he'll react. We know that he'll still love ball, whether he still will give all he's got. So it turns into a thing that helps teams and their evaluation, I think, more than hinders them.
Yeah. And also, I guess another part of it would be they feel like when they've had that breakout year, that is what everybody's going to look at. And if they have a lesser year the next year, it's not that big of a deal because I did it that one time. So Caleb did not play nearly as well in 2023 as he did in 2022, but I don't think anybody held that against him. They were like, well, he lost Jordan Addison. He lost some of his offensive line. And he still played really well, so we're not going to hold it against him. So I think that there's some truth to that. Now, it's not always true. Javion Cohen, I think, was looking a lot better coming out of 2022 than he does in 2023, and it does seem like some people are questioning him because of that. Yeah,
it is an oddity too, though, this year, Brendan. I think it feels like more this year than we've seen in recent years. There's always a couple of guys that have those underwhelming, but I can go across every positional group and point you with guys that Thought this was guy's going to be higher. He fell down. You got your Kalen Kings types who fell off a complete cliff. We're going to talk about Kalen King in a second out of Penn State. And it's like, dude, that guy was going to be a top 10 player and he's fallen off a complete cliff from that year he just had. You know, some guys just like, dude, you just like forgot how to play the sport. Like what the hell happened? I mean, some of them, it's not just bad down years. It's like, Jesus, you went bad, you know, you broke bad, you know, you Bryan Cranston that thing.
Exactly.
But thank you, Upo. Great question. Can't say that it's been a while since I've run into this kind of thing before. So it's been very much an oddity for us in evaluating. It makes it hard too, Brendan. What do you go off of? Do you go off the prior year at that point, Brendan? Or do you do the math on what I just talked about and say, well, you got to put that in your evaluation. So, you're going to have to knock them down a lick, that final season's got to carry the strength over it. Or is it case by case?
It is case by case. I think it has to be.
Yeah. I think it does as well, but I do think it's worthy if you knock them a bit to say, hey, that year you didn't bring it that year, you need to bring it. Then to me, it's very fair to say I'm not leaning on that 2 year ago tape, unless there's an injury situation or some explanation for what happened. Like you lost all the talent around you. I'm not leaning on that prior year's tape to hope that's who you truly are. You need to be, the last tape you put out should be the best tape in the evaluation process, I think. Mm-hmm. I know that's a no-brainer, Brendan, but I mean, that's where I think you can get yourself talked into the year 2 stuff too much,
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll keep it moving here through my 4th round here. My second 4th round player, who will be DeCamarion Richardson, another Ole Miss player, 6'2", 188. Nice arms on this guy, 32 3/8 inch. 4.3, 4.40, another blazing fast 40 time, 1.48, 10-yard split. Awesome broad jump, pretty good vert. Testing numbers were good with this kid. What did you think about Mr. Richardson?
Well, he's really, really interesting when you see those testing numbers and the length. And, physically, he's just about everything you could want, right? He's got it all. Insane number of tackles over the last 2 years for a corner, by the way. He might have more tackles than any corner in the country over the last 2 years. Big and long with the wingspan to get his hand on passes frequently if he wants to. Phenomenal straight line speed and acceleration. Really good tackler. Really good at intelligently attacking run plays. Like he doesn't, he reads run blocking and then he makes a play based on what he sees the run blocking doing. He's got recovery speed to get beat and get back in the play like Woolen does. You can beat him and he'll get you back. Doesn't really have the short area quickness or change of direction skills I would like. His hip transitions are segmented. I don't think his football IQ is all there yet. I feel like he's raw. I feel like he's really raw, and he needs to find something he does that works really well other than just run support. So I think you are definitely taking him as a project, but it's a project I would spend a 4th round pick on because there's so much fun stuff here. It is very Reek Woolen-y, honestly.
Great way of putting it. Fantastic way of putting it. And that's what really, I think your evaluation basically hits the mark to pretty much my outlook on this player as well. He does play the run well, but he is very rough in coverage. I've seen an out route on a tight end turn him around in a circle. A simple guy just running up to the stem of the route, cutting it out, and he does the whoop, goes around, and you're going, come on, DeCamarion, like it's just a tight end. You got that, man. So you're going to have to take him a long way in the coverage and his awareness and his understanding of route concepts and his just getting a better natural feel for how to play the position. Gave up over 400 yards receiving. So he did get picked on as much as I think just about 67 targets this last year, Brendan. He was picked on as any cornerback I've seen that we scouted in this draft. Not a lot of ball skills as well, but the willingness to play run and the fact that he couldn't run with anybody makes him a guy to me that is a guy that would be very much an attractive target round 4 as that developmental guy. This is a project, all you got are the beams in the house, Brendan. We don't have any of the floors. We don't have the walls, no insulation, but once you build it up, you could have yourself a hell of a home. I'm
inclined to agree. This is another guy who Pete would have been all over. Pete would have loved this guy.
This would have been a Pete Carroll special. No doubt about that guy here.
We'll keep in the building, by the way, just something to keep in mind.
That is true. They're taking his pictures down though, so I don't know if that means we'll be as it's hard to say if you're going to as much Pete in the building at that point when you're doing that. Right. Keeping it moving through this 4th round, a guy I didn't have any testing numbers on, but Kalen Carson, CC out of Wake Forest, 6 foot, 200-pound kid, a little bit undersized arm, 31 3/8 inches. I put him in my middle to late-ish fourth round for me here, Brendan.
Yeah, I was a little more fifth round on him. I like the way he plays. He plays with a lot of fire, tenacity. Should be good in zone. Should be a really good zone corner. A lot of fight at the catch point. He's a good mirror when he's put in man coverage. He mirrors well. His hip flipping is fluid, good size. No interceptions in the last 2 years is at least noteworthy.
None of these guys have any ball skills, do they?
Yeah. And he struggles so much to turn and play the ball. He always plays the man, so he's going to get penalized a lot if he can't figure that out. And because his arms are short, or at least short relative to the rest of the league, I do wonder if he's going to end up in the slot, but that's a little bit harder to determine. They're not that short, but they are shorter than I think you typically see on the outside. So I went fifth round on him.
Yeah, I can understand an evaluation of seeing that that's where he is. I think I saw a little bit more in mine that I know the testing numbers aren't here with him, Brendan, but he did feel to me like a 4.4, 155, 10-yard split kind of guy on tape to me. So I trust his speed and quickness out there. The arms aren't terribly short. It's just a little bit under the 32. Real aggressive kind of corner, full of feistiness, and he's constantly constant energy, constantly moving, constantly getting things going. Played mainly in off coverage. I think that's where he's best. He does play a little bit of man, but zone is where you want to, I think, have him out. He's got quick feet, ability to drive on the ball. Got the speed to stay over the top. Felt like he tackled pretty strongly overall. He does have to clean up some things in coverage that he just at times I think will get a little bit listless out there and just suddenly get beat on something that's pretty rudimentary that he shouldn't get beat on. Where he's just like, that took you, that got you, okay. You just held up for 5 straight snaps on much tougher routes there to keep covered than you have. So I don't know if he just kind of sometimes had a little bit of check out there. 400 yards, given up 4 touchdowns this past year, Brendan. A little bit of grabbiness and coverage on top of that. That's a big part you got to kind of clean up. But I do think he has the raw goods, which is why I put him in this 4th round. If I thought he was more 1.45, 1.6, I probably put him in that 5th round range where you put him. But this is where you sometimes like to have that testing numbers to lean on a little bit with that first having to guess. Mm-hmm. This is nice where the teams get those GPS times that they're starting to get, where they got the actual field testing time so they can know for sure with him.
Yeah. Like there was an article written about this recently. They were talking about Brock Bowers because he still has not run a 40, obviously. And some people were trying to guess, like, what's his 40 time? And there were a bunch of answers. They were like 4.8, 4.56, 4.63. And it's like, they have those GPS things on the players now, right? Like, you can probably figure this out very accurately. And then somebody's like, one of the scouts, anonymous scouts, was like, I bet he runs a 4.8 40, and that's why he won't do it. It's like, okay, I understand that you can't watch him test because he didn't test, but you can watch his tape, right?
The thing I don't get with that is, like, they gave him fly sweeps from the tight end position. Does that track to you that a guy running a 4.8 is going to be handed a fly sweep and do it well, like bust that thing out down the field? I mean, he's going to be a guy more about breaking tackles at that point because he's so big and hard to bring down a bit, but that in itself shows you that if you give that ball to that kind of guy in that play and he's able to round that edge, he get the edge, especially on that play, there's some quickness to him there. Maybe not the full speed, but at the very least some quickness.
Right.
It's odd. Yeah. I would like to see him test though, knowing what Bowers has. But if it allows him to land in 16, he can not run all day, Brendan. Like, don't do a one bench press rep. In fact, do one bench press rep on the 225. That'd be great. Keeping it moving here through the 4th round, another guy might be a little bit higher on you than you on this one. A guy that kind of grew on me the more I watched him on his tape, which was Elijah Jones, a kid out of Boston College. Another really great testing times, another little bit slightly shorter arms. 4.4, 1.54, 10-yard split, but a 42.5-inch vert, almost 11 feet on the broad, Brendan. This kid is, to me, a very, very interesting player here in the 4th round.
Yeah, I have him in my 4th as well. Really good ball hawk. Really, really impressive ball skills overall, I think. He's long. He's relative to this draft class actually kind of long. Like, I know 31.5-inch arms doesn't stand out typically. In this class, it does. 5 years of starting experience at Boston College. Smooth flow from back pedal to running. when he flips his hips. Good tackler. Sometimes I feel like he gets out physical because he doesn't have the strength that you would love to see. Slow acceleration. I think he'll be really good in zone as a ball hawk corner who knows how to read route combos and make plays on his read. I don't know if he'll be so good anywhere else, but that's enough, right? That's most of what you're going to be asked to do in a lot of defenses. So I say 4th round.
Yeah, ball hawk that plays the run, right there to build off of with some coverage skills and certain types of coverage schemes are going to be just enough. Like you say, that's enough. I'm not going to comp him to like a Richard Sherman type, but I thought that there's some Richard Sherman intelligence in his anticipating of routes, the great late hands that he can bring up at the catch point, both to get picks and knock the ball away. He gives you some versatility to play in the slot. He had a third of his snaps out of the slot, Brendan. Even had 35 snaps as a box safety last year. So you talk about the flexibility that might appeal to Seattle. Here you go. 7 picks over the last 2 years, 5 last year, 21st in college football as far as his rating by PFF. Only 13 receptions allowed on 40 targets for 194 yards. And I did think he was strong in the running game. Much better than some of the corners in this class that we've looked at, Brendan, that have just a ton of missed tackles on their resume and just not as many with him. He is better in zone than man. You got to put him back in zone. That's a little bit that Richard Sherman thing. Like, get him a chance. Maybe it's that Boston College education, but give him a chance to sort of sit back there and diagnose and figure out what's kind of going on, and then give him that opportunity to jump and pull the trigger, and he's going to get some picks for you. So solid all-around player. You get this kid in the 4th round. That's some great value, I think, for this guy, because I have a lot of good feeling about his floor getting there. Maybe not the huge ceiling, but the good floor that you can reach with him.
Yeah. I'm about where you are on him, I think. So pretty good synergy there.
All right, let's keep it going here to another corner. I think this is another kid out of Georgia. Another, I believe, going to be, I believe I've got this kid down as a slot specialist. And that's going to be Tyke Smith out of Georgia, our second corner out of Georgia we're taking a look at here.
I think I had him listed as a safety. Is he not a safety?
He played slot last year.
Okay, I see. Okay, I do have him, though, so okay.
Yeah, he's I think they might have moved. The thing about Georgia's defense is, of course, remember, it's that unusual one with the fronts they use and the back end they use and blitz heavy, and it's got some positional list elements to it in some of the players and how they play with that, with some of those games that they do run.
Mm-hmm.
But 4.46, 1.58, 36-inch vert, okay testing numbers for a slot. Mm-hmm. Nothing phenomenal there, Brendan. 5'10", 202, right below 32-inch long arms. So everything's just on the surface of this good enough. What did you see from him beyond the surface of it?
For a smaller guy, he plays really physically.
Mm-hmm.
Burst looks good on tape, even though it didn't test all that well. Capable of holding up well in man coverage, should be really good on special teams at the minimum, even if he doesn't necessarily cut in on defense. Now, I do wonder if he'll have a shorter career because he is small and plays so physically. He might be, the star that burns twice as bright, burns
both
out.
Candles, both ends.
Something like that.
Stuff.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit worried about that. He gets beaten over the top sometimes because he is so aggressive. And I feel like he does miss a fair few tackles because his reactive athleticism struggles against elusive ball carriers. But I do like him. I do wonder if he ends up as a safety in the NFL. But either way, I'd say 4th round is about right.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a possibility you could slide him into safety. You talked about the physicality, man. I really liked how he took on pullers and how he got disengaged off those blocks for being such an undersized guy. You know, he'll stick his nose into those offensive linemen at the second level. I thought his suddenness was what stood out as much as anything in his game, where you come back to that 1.58 and you go, man, he plays more like a 1.53, 1.52. It's quicker than that. I mean, whether it's on top of quarterbacks quickly or getting on top of ball carriers fast, the quickness in space shows up. Only 187 yards given up out of the slot this year. Many of those too, Brendan, I felt like were manufactured. You know, the slot's got so many of those bubble screens and quick little throws where you're out. Where when you just have him run the route, he was staying in coverage and staying sticky in coverage. Really, really sticky. I want to get that across with him. I felt like as a slot, and that just stood out to me. He does get he can get misdirected. It's rare. Sometimes he doesn't always clearly read whether it's run or pass. But he's got a high quality burst that works really well for the slot, and being such a willing tackler, being a guy that I think can have some fluidity in what he plays, whether he can play safety or not, Brendan, he could be that guy that you start out as a slot and then you move him into a safety look post snap, like we talk about Mike Macdonald's defense doing with other positions, or you can move him into being an outside corner post snap, and he could probably handle that stuff too. So I think he could be a potentially interesting target for our Seahawks in that way. And again, you mentioned safety, maybe even got some of that safety upside to where that can be his natural potential landing spot.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm predicting here.
All right, I've got two guys left in the fourth round here for me, and this is a guy you talked about a second ago, a kid out of Notre Dame, a real big kid, one of the big corners in this draft. That's Cam Hart, 6'3", 202. Got the long arms on this guy, Brennan, 33-inch long arms, 4'5". All the 6'3" guys just ran him down for 4'5", right? 1.5, 7-10 yard split. Did do a 40-inch vert. Almost got 11-inch broad. So that stuff was good. The 3-cone was good for a 6'3" guy at 7'1", not bad.
Right.
For a bigger guy there.
Yeah. So the size is there. The testing was a little disappointing overall, considering what the hype was around this guy. Like, this guy was expected to be like a super athlete. But still, when you're 6'3" and you have 33-inch arms, you can get away with a little bit more. So he's really explosive, should be able to be good in zone, and I think he'll be able to get away with a little bit of man, although his lack of speed will hurt. Used to play receiver, and his understanding of the receiver position helps him a lot now as he plays corner. He uses his length well when he presses, not afraid to tackle, and he's got good click and close. He wasn't very, it's kind of weird that a guy this long only had 8 passes defensed over the last 2 seasons combined. Like, the production doesn't match the profile. Like, why isn't this guy making plays on the ball constantly? He's also going to lose effectiveness the further away he gets from the line of scrimmage. When you ask him to cover 9 routes, I feel like he's not comfortable there. But I would still go 4th round on him. I think that testing has to make you a little bit concerned, combined with his lack of production. But there's clearly a very interesting player here.
Yeah, he's got some ability to him. I really like how he jumps on top of the stem of the route, which may be a little bit of the reason why he doesn't have as many incompletions on the first point of it being that he so often shows the quarterback he's off coverage, playing zone, but then will jump the route on the stem of the route. So he takes from the quarterback then the view of their separation, or there's an opening here for me to throw. So it's a lot of what he does, I think, Brennan, is dissuade throws in his direction. He was only targeted 28 times on the season, which is incredibly low for even some of the guys that we've looked at this year. And I think it comes from kind of how he plays that stem of the route. If you put him up in man, he gets really grabby, and he's grabby otherwise too. And it's like playing it off coverage is like, if you ever seen a thumb sucker that they put a glove on the thumb sucker, that's like him in off coverage, where he has the ability, I think, to play up and press, but it's just he can't help himself but to grab, and you force him in off coverage and he can't grab anything. He's 10 yards off coverage. He has to trust his hips. He has to trust his eyes. He has to go and try to jump on the route. 21 tackles this last year. Not a big tackler, not a big guy getting in on the run game. When he does, though, Brennan, 3 forced fumbles. So one every 8 tackles this year, he was causing a forced fumble, which is interesting with him, but not really a lot of that he's wanting to do. And he's had surgeries on both of his shoulders. So there is a little bit of concern here too with him on how the medicals check out with both of those shoulders. You put him in the 4th round, though? You did say 4th round?
Yeah, I did say 4th. That length and size is tough to ignore.
It is. And the fact that he can kind of somewhat drive on routes where sometimes those guys, 6'3" guys, are going to try to stay on top and leave the stuff underneath opened up, stands out a little bit with him. So, his game. Last 4th round guy for me is going to be Jarrian Jones, a 6 foot, 190-pound corner with little baby T-Rex arms, 30-inch long arms, but another 4'3" guy, another 1.5, low 1.5, 10-yard split guy, another guy, tickling there the 40 inches on the vertical leap and 11 feet on the broad.
Yeah, I had this guy in my 4th. I may have to bump him to my 5th, though, because I've been told that he's one of the worst tacklers ever. Like, apparently he averaged 1 missed tackle for every 10 snaps he played, according to somebody in my comments. So, he's one of the worst tacklers who's ever lived. He is fast. He does have great explosiveness in his lower body. Good ball production last year, 3 interceptions, really high PFF grade. Overall testing was notable. He's pretty physical as well. He's really good at throwing receivers off the route at the start with his press. Makes a lot of positive plays in zone. Upper level speed allows him to hang with 9 routes. He's smart in how he handles plays as well. I'm not a big fan of his click and close. I don't think he triggers fast enough. His acceleration up to top speed is mediocre. He's not a good tackler, like I said. And he's got very short arms, 30-inch flat. That's tough. So I go somewhere between the 4th and the 5th. It depends on how much you care about the tackling.
Yeah. I think the thing for me with the tackling was he flashes the ability to be a strong wrap-up tackler. It just comes in that he leans on the shoulder tackling stuff too much, and then he just kind of ricochets off of guys because, that's it. It's not, you can only do so much of that. It's hard to be the 7th highest graded cornerback by PFF and be completely miserable in tackling, right? Like there's definitely some holes to the tackling game. I'm not saying that he's like a remarkable tackler, but the tape that I saw, it wasn't some, let me just put it this way. There were much more egregious guys for me. He doesn't always want to get off the blocks. He does do the shoulder tackling stuff a little bit too much for my flavor, but he does provide you a hell of a cover corner guy that does flash the ability to tackle. There are times on tape you're watching him wrap up and do it properly, engage the proper technique. I think he's really good in a zone coverage kind of system. I do think the 30-inch arms move him to the slot at the next level, Brendan, but that he has the mobility to hold up with that. I think I liked a little bit more of his short area athleticism than you did on that side of it. I feel like he can trust his speed. He sometimes with his speed will show off being an ability to almost cover through 2 zones of space and how fast he can get from point A to point B, which really did stand out to me and could be really useful when you're talking about a slot guy having to go from a variety of different places, get from here over to here, and he can get there faster than other people could. He only had 8 snaps as a blitzer, but had 2 sacks, a hit, and a hurry. So he actually, when he was allowed to kind of cut it loose and become a little bit of a blitzer, he showed an ability to do that. Maybe have a little bit of an upside, especially coming off the slot. You do a little bit more of that, Brendan, if you're, I think, put in there a bit. So he has that ability. I guess I'm just leaning in a little bit more heavily on the flashes I saw of what he did good. He can more round out versus maybe what others might see on those lack of in between the flashes, saying that's more of the player he is.
Yeah, that tackling thing really just kind of threw me. Like that's really, really bad, and that may not be fixable because it's so bad. But the other stuff's pretty good, so I'm not going to completely bail on him.
Yeah, no, he's definitely got something to offer at least. Did you have any other 4th round guys on your list?
I believe I had a few. I think I had Andrew Phillips from Kentucky here, which is a little higher than you did.
A little bit higher than me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's super explosive. Broad jump was 11 foot 3 inches, which is one of the best broads we've ever seen from any corner. His vert was 42 inches, similarly one of the best verts ever for a corner. Really good tackling and run support. Has the athleticism to pull off man coverage. Can do press man stuff as well. He shows potential. Good click and close, disruptive at the point of catch. Doesn't have great ball skills. When the ball's in the air, he seems a little bit lost. Probably going to get flagged in the NFL because of it too, because he ends up playing the man, not the ball. Misses too many tackles from poor fundamentals. I feel like he does a little bit of ankle diving. So even though I think that his willingness is there, it's going to have to be cleaned up a little bit. No interceptions in his career is also a little bit head scratching because he's played a decent amount. I'm not enamored, but I do think about him as like a 4th round pick, probably late 4th. The lack of ball skills and tackling fundamentals are concerning, but I still would put him somewhere around the 4th.
Yeah, I dropped him into that 6th round range. Off coverage cornerback, does a lot of cover 3 bail dropping in that particular scheme out there at Kentucky. Like I say, just nice, good hip flip, drive, explosion on routes. But the thing that stood out to me with him and watching him play coverage is there's a tentative nature to him. There's a lack of aggression to him. He's got a ton of starting experience, but it's literally like he's walking on eggshells on the football field sometimes. Credited with giving up 39 completions for 438 yards this past year. The tackling that you mentioned, I think, is on point completely. It is a struggle. I don't know that I was as much believing as you were that there was the willingness or the interest to do it and getting off blocks and fighting hard. I think that that's a big question with him. I think he does too much guessing at the top of the stem of the route. There's no route anticipation with this guy. Everything's got to be reacting at the last minute to what's happening in front of him, which then somewhat neutralizes a little bit of that athleticism. And as you also said, despite playing all of that time, the ball skills just aren't there. So to me, more of an athlete than a football player. Tools are there, but I just don't think there's a natural feel in this. Another one of those not natural feel kind of players where I just felt like he just doesn't really kind of have an understanding for what he's exactly doing out there. Are you muted?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I can agree with some of that, but I think there's enough to warrant like a late fourth personally.
Understood. Definitely can't argue with those testing numbers. That's for sure.
Yeah. I also had Jalen Simpson. Did you have him? Some places list him as a safety, so you may not have him as a corner.
I think I had him as a safety.
Yeah, I feel like he can do both, which is appealing in and of itself. But yeah, we can go ahead and save him for the show tomorrow, next week then.
Okay. Yeah, let's push him on that one because we got a lot on these. Yeah. Who else do you have on yours?
I think I had DJ James in my 4th round.
Okay.
Auburn guy, another Auburn corner, 6 feet flat, 175. Pretty good 40 time he ran, 1.5 flat, 10-yard split. 18 passes defensed over the last 2 years, good PFF grades, played outside and inside, got good ball skills, should be flexible across man and zone, smart player. He can diagnose action in front of him when he's looking at it and then react appropriately to that action. Pretty good tackler. Some of the issues, he gets fooled by eye candy. He's somebody who could do a little bit of biting hard on like a double move and getting beat over the top because of it. He doesn't have the play speed to keep up with speedster wide receivers, doesn't really shed blockers. He's a little bit small and can get distracted sometimes by like people by like backfield stuff, by like stuff happening in the backfield, ends up spying on the backfield, gets beat over the top. But I think the ball skills and the football IQ make him desirable enough to say he's a 4th round pick.
Yeah, another guy that just so many of the snaps were pure outside off coverage, zone corner, playing the bail drop technique into cover 3, where it's he stays on top. He doesn't get beat over the top. I don't know if maybe it's Auburn teaching their guys to do that way and go so hard with how much depth they do get. I think we taught Pritchett was the other guy that did a lot of this. So I think it is a little bit of how they're asked to do it, but it does lead to him giving up a lot of stuff underneath. 32 receptions, 385 yards given up in coverage this year. I also think at 175 pounds, another guy that had to gain a little bit of weight to get to 175 for when he tested, and a guy that does get bullied at the catch point where he goes up and he tries to get up there. And if you have a bigger receiver out there, he's just sometimes going to have times that there's not a whole hell of a lot he can really do about it, which is why I dinged him down just to the 5th versus the 4th. So we don't have a big drop between where we see him here, Brendan. But he does have some nice natural athleticism and some explosion when he does engage it. He just wasn't engaging it a lot. He's just okay in run defense, tackling okay in that department. The effort, though, does have times where it's close to atrocious. He just doesn't seem to be interested in tackling and stopping the run. And I'm sorry to keep saying this, folks, but there are some corners in this draft, many of them that just they won't get off blocks. They won't engage the run. I mean, you can't even get to the point of does he sink his hips and lay proper tackling form? You don't even get to that because they don't get through the first 3 processes to get to that spot. And it just has me on a lot of these guys over and over again going, not good tackler, not good tackler, not good tackler. So I just, there was just too many negatives for me to keep him in that 4th round where I want to see a little more upside. But 5th round.
Yeah, I think that's all I had in the 4th.
All right, we'll turn this on into the 5th round here for me. And my first guy in the 5th round is going to be Marcellus Dial out of South Carolina, 6 foot 190, 32-inch long arms, 4.46, 1.55, 10-yard split. Those kind of those good bare minimum metrics across the board. But then he does turn in some good explosive numbers with the nearly 41-inch vert and 11-foot broad almost.
Yeah. He did not make my cut because I didn't want to do more. I didn't want to add even more corners to my list. So I did not have a chance to look at him. So this one's all yours.
No worries. He's at the top of my 5th round. Smooth, effortless kind of movement. when it doesn't look like he's playing hard, where he's perfectly balanced, gliding step for step with the receiver. He's best when he's playing press and running man coverage. Easy speed, catch-up speed. His footwork is top-notch. His initial hip flip is also impressive, which just keeps him on top of routes. He's not tenacious in the run game, but does more than enough, more than many corners in this draft in that respect of things. He does have a thing where he sometimes almost seems like he'll drift off in coverage, like this is too easy, and then he gets himself in trouble where quarterbacks will take advantage of it. Did give up his share of receptions, did give up his share of catches and yards this year. Not egregious, but he will get picked on a little bit with that. Not as much on the ball skills again there too, but a bit of a moment of truth mangler where it's better than just completely being Cam Hart, for instance. You mentioned he's a draper, right? I'm going to take my 6'3" body and just get it over the top of you when the ball is coming in route, get my big arms up around you, and that'll be all I do. At least with this guy, he'll kind of be one of those moment of truth manglers where he'll knock the ball out at that moment of truth. But solid cornerback prospect in the 5th round. Don't expect a ton from him, but just like how he played the game and how it kind of, there is a natural, we talk about lack of natural in some of these guys, their feel for what they're doing. There's a natural feel with him.
Okay.
Keeping it on moving. Let's go to Wazoo. I know Snail will be happy out there if he's listening. We got Chow Smith Wade, 5'10", Washington State corner, lit it up at the Senior Bowl, 184. Tiny arms, folks. We got some alligator arms all over the place, and I'm not talking about short passes over the middle. I'm talking about tiny arms, 30 and 1/4 inch arms, 4.54, 40-yard dash, 1.55. So hits those marks, 34-inch vert, 10.5 broad, kind of average numbers across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe slightly smaller than you like, certainly shorter arm than you like, Brennan. And now, as a Husky, can you look at a Cougar without hate in your heart, or do you just have to just put it on the table for a second?
I got to be honest. For most of my lifetime, the rivalry's been pretty. Washington State has had one really great team in the last 20 years. The team that probably would have gone to the playoff if we didn't win the Apple. Remember that was the snow game?
Yeah. So that's a very Western Washington passive aggressive answer.
Yeah, I mean, I hate Oregon a lot more. I hate the Trojans a lot more. I hate even Stanford, honestly, because those Harbaugh Stanford teams were an absolute nightmare to deal with. So I don't know. I usually, I don't know how you feel about this, but I end up kind of rooting for the Cougars a lot because it makes the conference look better.
Well, I think to your point, like you said, they've had some hard luck, and it's hard not to go, well, we want you guys at least somewhat legitimate. And when I was growing up, you had the Ryan Leaf, you had the Drew Bledsoe, and you had some cast of characters around that could become legitimate NFL players to where, they could challenge Washington in that Apple Cup in a way. And it does seem like it has become very, very, very one-sided.
Yeah. So no, I would have no problem with it. I think you liked him a little bit more than I did. Not too different though. I think he's good in zone, really good at reading routes, identifying routes, quick trigger from his back pedal. So the click and close is nice. Can tackle, good run support, has played man and zone while he was at Washington State, but he's small. So he'll probably be slot only, especially with those short arms. He's grabby, going to get flagged a decent amount, I suspect, unless he can clean that up. Not great ball skills. I feel like he plays the man, not the ball. And not that this matters for the NFL because he won't be doing it, but press coverage is hit or miss. So I feel like he's a good college player who will lose a lot of his value in the NFL because the arm length becomes that much more of a killer in the NFL. I think he'll be fine as a slot corner who stays in zone coverage, but won't be much more than that. I'd say 6th round on him.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting to see what he's going to do to work around that length, and if he can have any potential hold up inside, or if it is full slot, because it could be just slots where he's got to go. He does have quick, loose hips that would fit him well to go to the slot. I thought he was really competitive and physical in a really great way at the catch point, especially. Not that he got his head around. Your assessment is correct in that he doesn't, really look around. He's more just going to try to get himself in front of the receiver. He did get 2 interceptions during Senior Bowl week, during the Senior Bowl game, after a really strong week. So he's had a good pre-draft process, that's for sure. But yeah, a little over aggressive, sometimes causes him to hold a little bit in coverage, and the run defense is highly inconsistent. When he's engaged, he'll come up and stick his nose in there. He'll use great tackling form. When he's not engaged, it's a lot of missed tackles. So it kept kind of going back and forth between the tape I saw on him with that. And you're not going to get, I think, a lot of interceptions despite those 2 picks of the Senior Bowl. He just doesn't get his head around, quite enough. So thought still, even if you have him as a floor guy at slot, that he could find a way to, fit into maybe becoming a starter in there. But I could see 6th round on it too.
Yeah.
Keeping it on moving here. Let's go with the next guy I've got on my list, who's going to be a kid named Kalen Carson out of Wake Forest.
I think we already
we talked about him. Yeah, we talked about him. My bad. Keep it going here. Isaiah Johnson then.
Did I have him there? I had Isaiah Williams, Isaiah Adams. No, I don't have the Isaiah. I don't have the Isaiah Johnson variant. This is all you.
Another 6'3" corner in this draft, Brandon. There's about 5 of these guys, 4.64. So the speed issues are there, but he did do a 38.5-inch vert, 11-inch broad. So the explosive numbers were good. Kind of his patented move is jumping comeback routes off coverage. Another guy, keep off coverage. Don't want him to flip his hips. Really weird is that when he gets up in off coverage, Brendan, if you watch him, he puts his head over his feet. He gets so low. So he gets really low in his stance and his head gets over his feet like he's skiing. It's kind of wild to watch. Stays patient on his bail drops. Capable hitter for the position. It's a double-edged sword because he can sometimes become that shoulder tackler guy rather than the wrap-up guy, which causes the missed tackles for a guy at 6'3" that shouldn't have it. It's got 32 and 7/8 inch long arms. So he has the prerequisite, size with that type of stuff. If the receiver can get him to flip his hips, the receiver's usually going to find his way to getting open. So he's got the issue with being a bigger guy that just can't flip his hips. Gave up 400 yards in coverage. Okay ball skills. Contested catch situations, he's going to put his long arms to use. This is one of those guys that no doubt Pete Carroll would have liked quite a bit. But at 24 years old, I believe he is also probably topped out. And what he is what he is. But still, fit with the right scheme. Let him stay off coverage. Let him stay cover 3. Let him stay on top. Let him kind of use his big size. And he is a pretty good run defender overall. He can take on blocks and whatnot with that. Then in the right kind of scheme, maybe he can grind his way to starting eventually.
Okay, not bad.
Next up, I've got Jarvis Brownlee out of Louisville. This is another 5th round guy for me.
Yeah. And for me as well.
Okay. 5'10", 194. No testing numbers. Another short-armed dude here, man. A lot of these guys.
Yeah. Some experience playing slot as well as playing outside. And the slot experience will help because he'll probably play the slot in the NFL. Change of direction is quick and explosive. Has good jamming skills at the line of scrimmage. Reads route patterns and acts well in that read. Also has the awareness to hang in zone. Is a little physically weak. He's going to get bullied by bigger receivers. Jake Bobo would have fun with him.
Yes, sir.
DK Metcalf would have fun with him.
Dominate him.
Mm-hmm. Probably will be full-time slot in the NFL because he is a little bit smaller. He didn't test, but my impression is that he's a pretty average athlete overall. I don't think he stands out remarkably well in that area. Not very disruptive at the catch point. You'd like to see him be a little more relentless, trying to rip the ball out at the catch point. So I think he'll be valuable enough to be a 5th round pick. I think he'll be a decent slot corner, and he has the reactive athleticism to stick with his man from that position.
Yeah, I thought he was a gritty man corner who was asked at times on that outside to play and played some slot too, play like a linebacker in the way that they used him a bit, which I think is going to lend itself really well to when with Jarvis moving into the slot. He played most of his snaps on the outside, but there was about a quarter of the snaps to the inside. So he's got the understanding. He's been in there too. So it's not going to be new at the pro level. I just thought he played really angry against the run, especially compared to a lot of these other cornerbacks in this draft. I really underlined strong tackler on my notes for him. Did give up 300 yards in coverage, 4 touchdowns this year. So a lot of that's just going to be him playing on the outside at times where he's too small and doesn't have the arm length out there to hold up. Really, I thought he was snappy in his flip of hips, Brendan. I think all of the movement ability just seems like it translates to its best. Him kicking inside and him being in there. Another guy that just more often than not, it's not going to look back for the ball. You don't want him in, off coverage moments on the outside. That's when he really had his issues, Brendan. Again, he gets kicked to slot. This gets mitigated. So a lot of the issues that you did see for me with him on tape, Brendan, I was like, well, once he goes to slot, this won't be a problem. And the good parts of his game, when he does move to slot, will still be highly beneficial. So a guy that I think has actually an ability to round into being kind of a league average slot corner that you end up getting in the 5th round, which would be, that's damn good value, Brendan.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. Just another solid slot corner.
Yes, sir. All right, next on my list here, and again in the 5th round, I've got about 5 guys left here, thick 5th round. MJ Devonshire out of Pittsburgh. Did you have a chance to take a look at him?
Yes, I did, and I think I had him in about this same area. Yes, I did. It's 5th round pick. I like his click and close. I like his longish arms. They're not that long compared to some others, but in this class, they're
gargantuan.
Very long. Yeah. Testing numbers overall were about average, up and down. 40 was okay. Change of direction's awful, but the jumps are good. Really good production the last 2 years. Great ball skills, 18 passes defense, 7 interceptions. He's really good at watching the quarterback, watching the quarterback's eyes. Moves well in space, has a good press. Not a very good tackler, and it doesn't seem like he's really motivated to tackle all that well. Little bit on the smaller side, doesn't have the speed to keep up with the faster receivers. I think he's a zone corner in the NFL, but there's nothing wrong with that. But I think he'll be a ball hawk in zone, and I think he can play inside and outside because he's got the movement skills to play inside and the length to play outside. So 5th round pick.
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more towards thinking he's more man coverage than zone coverage to me. I thought he has an ability to really loose hips, explosiveness, get him up and let him turn and burn. Especially his 0 to 60 to me, Brendan, was really impressive. Shorter explosiveness. I do agree with you. You can play him on the inside and the outside. He did give up quite a few yards in coverage last year. Not a lot of completions, but whatever completions he gave, there was a lot of yards on the back end of it. I didn't love his run defense. 659th cornerback, college cornerback rated by PFF last year. So the grades were really brutal across the board with that. So I also think he had a hard time with physicality from receivers. They were able to fight their way open at times, with just a hand shove or whatever, not even illegally, just hand fighting and getting open off the back of it. He does have some ball skills though. 7 interceptions over the past 2 years. He does get his head turned around. He does, put himself in a position to get it, which again is a pretty great trait to have, Brendan, versus some of these other guys we've seen in this draft so far. So, but the run defense and tackling was in the toilet this year. I just didn't think it was strong. It was pretty close to miserable from him, but I do like how he moves. I do like the way you can kind of, I think, put him in man and let him just go. And he might find a home in being able to play that way in the right scheme at the next level. But boy, does he have to clean up his run defense.
Yeah. And that would be a big problem here. So it's hard to be too interested personally.
That would be a big issue. I don't think he's landing here. This would not be a targeted spot. My other 5th round guy, this was a late guy for me to my board, didn't test. You may not have had a chance to take a look at him either, which is Ro Torrance out of Arizona State.
He barely did not make my cut.
Yeah, he almost didn't with mine. I was about to give up and I was like, oh, Brendan will probably look at this one. So I figured a Pac-12 kid, I better get him checked out here. Another 6'3", 208 guy, Brendan. He's got 34 and 1/8 inch long arms. So very long arms. Put together a solid all-around season for the Sun Devils. They usually put him in press coverage and let him jam and then just trusted he could stay with the receiver. First playing the off coverage stuff, a lot of these other bigger corners, Brendan do, he attacks as a run defender. He supplies a willingness to really take on offensive linemen and really heads up where other cornerbacks just won't do that. He's not going to get thrown around. He wasn't actually the rare big cornerback, Brendan, that wasn't comfortable in actually being in off coverage. So a bit of a tough man where it's like, well, you're not going to be able to really flip your hips when you want to play that press stuff at the next level, or maybe you will. Maybe you have that weird part of your skill set that can do it with those long arms, but tough moving the hips. He's not super fast. Not super explosive, but did get the job done on the tape I watched of him, Brendan. So I put him in the 5th because I thought I liked the fact he was a guy that could be 6'3", play press and run with some of these guys with some confidence and then play the run as well as he did. It did appeal to me along with those super long arms.
Okay. Not bad.
Next guy on my list here. And I don't think I have my notes on this guy. I got to find my other stuff here. Let's go with Kalen King.
Okay. This is a very interesting one, right? This is a lot of interesting things going on here. This guy was a top 10 pick at, let me think.
Last year.
Like
August?
6 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of, remember Sean Wade, the Ohio State corner?
Mm-hmm.
I remember that one year he was building up to like first round. He was in the first round, and then he fell off the face of the earth very quickly.
That's right. No, I do remember that. And this one's maybe even more of a startling fall from grace from what he's had to deal with.
So he's got about average size. He's got short arms. Ran a really bad 4.61. That's brutal. That's hard to get over. His combine in general was bad. After a season where he had 3 interceptions and 18 passes defensed in 2022, he proceeded to have 0 interceptions and 2 passes defense last year. And I think he played. I don't think he missed significant time.
No, he's out there going. No,
so very prolific ball production in 2022. He's very young still. He's only 21. Most of the guys in this range of the draft are like 23, 24. So he could get better. He's got good smooth transitions from his back pedal to his run when he flips the hips. He's got the awareness and knowledge to get it done in zone. He's a good tackler, physical in coverage. He processes information well. These are all the things I would have said after 2022. Unfortunately, 2023 happened and none of those traits really showed up. He's very slow, clumsy, click and close. It looks very tentative to me. Not very strong, gives up too much cushion. All these things that worked so well in 2022 have just disappeared. I don't know what happened. All that's left really is a slow, mediocre athlete with mediocre size. He feels like he's smart. I feel like he's got brains, but he doesn't have the athleticism to actually act on that football IQ, you know?
He does. It's how do you explain the drop in the tape? I mean, last year he's running the routes for the receivers and the quick feet, the loose hips, the dexterity, the explosiveness. It's all over the tape. You're watching a lockdown corner last year. Him being a first round pick or being targeted to be that top guy was rightfully so. The tape, told you that. He went from being a top 10 PFF cornerback last year to now being rated 712th out of 832 rated cornerbacks by PFF last year. And you can't even put it on the back of Brennan saying it's his run defense because his run defense actually came forward this year. Like his tackling isn't great, but his actual instincts and willingness to play the run and to try to get off blocks, that had been bad in the past. That started to actually kind of improve this year. It's his 55.7 coverage grade, the thing you want him to do. And what to make of it, I don't know. He's also had a really poor pre-draft process. And I'm not just talking about the testing scores, but when he went out to the Senior Bowl, it didn't get any better. And so you can't lean on that previous year's tape. I've got to lean on what you've done recently. And I put him in the back of this round because, man, last year's tape was just so good. If I'm taking a risk on the last end of the 5th round at that point, then so be it. But boy, it's been a starting fall from grace. And one thing I noticed last night is getting prepped for the show, Brendan, is we got 3 Penn State cornerbacks in this draft, 3 draftable Penn State cornerbacks in this draft. What happened? You have 2 edge rushers in Adisa Isaac and Chop Robinson off the edge to supply you pass rush. Why are all of you underperforming across the board? I don't have an answer for it, but it's something that does strike me is all these guys are physically very talented and they didn't get it done on the football field for that Penn State defense in that secondary last year. You're muted.
It's a mystery.
It is a mystery. All right. Well, that was the last of my 5th round, guys. Did you have anybody else in your 5th round?
Let me see here. Ryan Watts. Did you get a look at Ryan Watts?
That was one of mine that I didn't get to.
Well, he's very interesting, and I think I can sell you on why he's interesting with 2 words. 34.5-inch arms.
Ooh, there we go.
So
those numbers here.
6'3", 208 pounds, 34.5-inch arms. Very explosive as well. 40.5-inch vert, 10-foot 5-inch broad. Good change of direction skills. Not a lot of production the last couple of years for Texas, but a moderate amount. Good fighter at the catch point. Changes direction and moves fluidly. Can play man or zone. Capable tackler, not afraid to get involved in run support. Now, he doesn't have the speed to consistently play man coverage, so I would restrict him mostly to zone. Very little ball production in his career, which, given how big he is, you would expect him to have more than 6 passes defensed over the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes slips into lackadaisical effort and loses technique for no real reason. It just, I don't know. It's just like he suddenly has a bad rep. So this is another kind of a Tariq Woolen type pickup, right? You've got a guy who's big and long, and that's interesting. He would have been great in Pete Carroll's defense, and Mike Macdonald might also be intrigued by this level of potential. So slap a 5th round grade on him for me. I put a 5th rounder.
Looks like Washington kind of abused him too. That was really one of his rougher games. It looked like they really went at him with it. But yeah, I didn't have a chance to watch him too much. He was the last guy on my list. It just didn't quite get to.
I think that's all I had.
Okay. Let's turn over here to the 6th, 7th round for me. I just kind of put everybody in the same spot on this spot. My first guy I've got on my 7th round board is Daquan Hardy, one of those Penn State kids I was talking about.
Yes, and I believe I did look at him as well. Let me take a look here and be sure. Oh, I actually had a different Penn State guy. I had Johnny Dixon.
That's those 3. I said there's 3 of them, Brendan. There's 3 guys.
Okay, so I did not have Hardy. He did not make my cut.
So Hardy, let me get the deal up here for him. Sorry, one sec here. Where's it? Oh, maybe I don't have it here. Yeah, I got it, Kitty. Sorry, one sec.
The cat ate your homework.
She did. I had the guy posted here, and now he's not here, so I'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. 5'9", 179-pound corner, Brendan, with 30-inch long arms. This is a slot-only kind of cat. Now, he tested really well. 4.38, 1.5, 10-yard split, almost a 43-inch vertical leap, and a 10.6 broad jump. So the testing numbers were great with him. This, to me, made 3 underperforming Nittany Lion corners in this draft. He's a slot corner, but he did play some on the outside, but he's only slot at the next level. Quick, fast, explosive. Plays with a linebacker's mentality against the run when he stays committed, which is not all the time. Doesn't quite run as fast as he was tested at 4.38. He's more like a 4.45, 4.5 guy to me. Ranked 544th out of all college cornerbacks by PFF. So, again, another guy very poorly graded. When he checks out of the run, he's clocked out. It's not really complicated with Daquan and coverage, Brendan. He may have the wheels to stay with every receiver, but not the understanding for how to do it. One change of direction, and he's saying, which way did he go? Which way did he go? Just can't stay in with it. So he feels really small in the field. He certainly has all the mobility in the world to be a sudden slot receiver in the NFL level, but not a lot of natural feel there. Doesn't play the run at a consistent enough basis to feel like you can really trust him there. I think the testing kind of ends up tricking you a little bit here. Maybe some special teams value, but outside of that, I don't think there's a lot he offers. Moving along, how about Tarib Still?
I did have, is it Tarib or is it Tarheeb? I wrote down Tarheeb.
Potato.
The Maryland, right? The Terrapin?
That's right.
Right, okay. Yeah, so didn't test all that well. Decent size, really short arms, though, like sub 30. He played inside and outside at Maryland, 5 interceptions last year, cerebral understanding of routes, sure-handed with a lot of interceptions, plays the run respectably. He's not going to be able to play outside in the NFL because his arms are so short. The speed means that he can't hold up in man. Probably going to get a lot of flags as well. Tends to be grabby. And while he does play the run respectably, he's not a great tackler. So run-of-the-mill slot-only corner. I was more 7th round UDFA on him.
Yeah, I could see that being where he goes too. He's got some base slot skills I like. The stop and start, the flip in the hips, the explosion to jump the route when the opportunity presents itself. Don't think he's going to have any chance to play outside. Obviously, 29 and 5/8 inch arms, Brendan. Those are really small arms. You're getting to a point with those inch arms where it's like, okay, it's just to a point you can't. Come on, what are we doing? Good understanding route concepts. You're not going to trick him easily. He has just enough quickness, I think, for the position, as evidenced by his testing numbers. You might find a guy that can round the slot, but just doesn't have a lot of exceptional physicality there or wheels to make it really stand out versus especially a lot of guys even in this draft. I think it's either a 6-7 UDFA kind of guys where he probably lands. Continuing, moving on, we did Chris Abrams' Drain, right? Did we do that one already? Yeah, we did that one, right? Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. I remember.
And then, so the next guy I've got on my list is going to be a kid out of Dakota. Miles Harden out of South Dakota, 5'11", 195. Another guy beneath 30-inch long arms. Did you have a chance to take a look at him?
Man, he did not make my cut. I could have gotten up to like 50 if I really wanted to, couldn't I?
I know. Yeah, you could have, man. I did. Look, once you get to 38, you're about done on any positional group. You've about had enough. Not a lot to be had with this guy. I won't spend a lot of time on him. Outside corner with T-Rex arms. You're going to have to kick him inside. He does have loose hips, excellent change of direction, a willing tackler that plays slightly bigger than his size. I like that part about him. Got a great timing on the snap count, Brendan, the thing that stood out to him, but this gets neutralized once you move him inside, as he was really played games with quarterbacks on when he would show you a press look and do that move where you flip the hips and you bail right before the snap, and you really diagnose to a quarterback who might look and say, oh, I've got you up in press. I can hit you with the 9 route over the top. And instead he's hitting into a bail drop technique just as you're at the snap, and he can kind of change your pre-snap read as a quarterback in his timing of the route and getting into sort of a change of what he shows from pre to post snap. Really the one thing that stood out to me, but again, Brendan, it gets neutralized because he has to go into the slot at the next level. He was rarely tested on the outside in the film I watched. I mean, really rarely tested. Playing at South Dakota, though, there's a little bit of the competition thing going on there. And obviously I don't have endless runs of South Dakota State to call upon. But I thought in the 7th round, as a guy that, maybe can just have a nice feel for how to play and has the hips and has kind of some, even though he didn't test great, I think has some of the natural ability in there. Maybe take a run on him in the 7th round, but could be a UDFA guy too.
Okay.
And then we got the other underperforming Penn State corner here, and the guy that you did look at, which would be the other outside corner on that Penn State defense, Johnny Dixon.
Yeah, these are the shortest arms yet, I think. 29 and a half.
We've had one of those about right there. I think that we've got a couple of those guys.
I will say he is the best blitzer at corner in this draft. 7.5 sacks over the last 2 years. He almost had as many sacks as Chop Robinson over the last 2 years.
There we go.
Twitchy movement skills, explosive, aware enough to do well in zone, and he's got the short area quickness to hang okay in man. His long speed is pretty good, but he's small, and the short arms are definitely going to force him inside. Does a lot of grabbing and holding. He's going to get flagged in the NFL. Physically, he's weak and doesn't really tackle. He's too small, too weak. Can't wrap up because his arms are tiny. So decent enough athlete. I could see like a 6th or 7th round pick on him for the things that he is good at, but it's not interesting until then.
Yeah, I think 20 years ago, this kid finds more of a footing versus the modern designs and the modern necessities of what you have to bring to the position. It's old school. You put him in press coverage, let him just stay glued to guys, and he'd probably be okay, in that way. But now in this day and age, you need guys at the corner position that can run, defend, and can do more than just try to run with guys and being a bit of an undersized size, because there's bigger receivers that are just going to beat you with contested catch situations. He's not comfortable in off coverage at all. 539th rated cornerback by PFF last year. All of those Penn State cornerbacks, Brendan, what the hell happened? I don't think he has any notable ball skills, doesn't tackle, just kind of a toolsy, slightly undersized project is my bottom line.
Yeah.
Last guy I have on my list is the guy that it was announced the Seahawks actually met with, which is interesting. Not a huge fan of this guy's game either. Another guy that I do see as a undrafted rookie free agent type, Carlton Johnson.
Yeah, I put Carlton in my 6th round just because I like the ball skills. But he's certainly small, short arms. I like his click and close. I think he's a pretty decent athlete. Change of direction skills. But he's just small and probably can't do. He's going to be slot only in the NFL. Not comfortable when he's far away from the line of scrimmage. Tackling's not good. Not particularly willing to tackle either. So not really a fit for what we're trying to do here. So 6th round and not even that here. Yeah.
I think you're right. There's some ball hawk kind of stuff going on with him. There's some certainly ball skills, 4 picks last year, 8 in 3 years. He's willing to go up and pluck it, Brendan. There is some quickness and change of direction to his game. The arm length is short, like you say, so he's got to go into the slot. which is going to be weird because he played so much off coverage as an outside corner as an undersized guy. So when you get him into the slot, he is going to be in a bit of a territory that's not normal to him or understood. 548 yards given up in coverage last year, Brendan, at Fresno State, where he's not exactly getting faced with, Malik Neighbors this week and Marvin Harrison next week, right? So, you go, what happened there with the coverage? And certainly playing on the outside and being short arm is going to hurt him there with being undersized. 173 pounds too, in addition to that, just very, 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 very small. I think he probably goes UDFA, but maybe Seattle does. I think that's probably why they're mean with him. It's like, we'll go UDFA and we're trying to sell you on the place a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, that was all I had on my list of guys here.
Yeah, I got a little bit. I did look at Willie Drew of Virginia State. He Virginia State, not Virginia. That's the Virginia State Trojans. I think they're I know this guy played for an HBCU as well. So he's one of the every year the NFL talks about their HBCU guys. And it's fun to see if one will get drafted or not. It's like a bet you can make, over under 0.5 HBCU players. 34 passes defensed over the last 2 years, including 11 interceptions. So the ball skills will translate. Some of it won't, but he's got legitimate ball skills. He's got decent length, 32-inch arms, 6 feet tall. Change of direction and burst is good. He's really good in press. He is segmented on his flipping hips, hesitant on his click and close, obviously playing very weak competition. Not going to do much in run support, but there's something on here. There's something here. When you have ball skills like that, you'll probably be able to do something.
Well, and when you get under that 1.5 on the 10-yard split too, Brandon, I mean, that's just a territory that's kind of a different, even in NFL places where everyone's fast at 1.59, 1.49, you're getting in that place. You're in a kind of a special area, and an area where, that's what allows you to make that jump on those balls and make the, I haven't seen his game, but that would be something that just stood out to me, is that you got that short area burst. That's what can get you to being able to make those picks that other players can't get to on time.
Yeah. And one other guy I want to briefly mention here would be actually a guy we met with as well. The Argonaut, Quantez Stiggers. That's a great did not play any college football. Played 1 year with Toronto, had 5 interceptions. The testing numbers are pretty decent. 4.49, 1.52, 10-yard split, 10-foot 8-inch broad, which is really nice. Decent size, 6 feet tall, 204 pounds, 30.5-inch arms. Good in zone, good at reading the play when he's watching it develop in zone. His trigger downhill, his click and close is good. Great ball skills. Should be able to play outside in the NFL as long as he can overcome his arm length, which admittedly they're pretty short. Probably going to draw a lot of flags in the NFL. Doesn't have upper level NFL speed. Not equipped to play press man. And it's just hard, right? He played 1 year in the CFL. That's all I have. That's tough. You're asking a lot to evaluate that one. So 7th round, it would be okay, I guess.
Understand.
I think the ball skills are legit.
7th round's worth taking the Flyers, man. 6th round to me is worth taking the Flyers at that point. So, that is where, though I will say it was interesting to John that though they live so heartily, Brendan, in that value-based mindset now in recent drafts, that he has said that they are willing in the later rounds to go more for the need, which would take you away a little bit less, you'd think, from what you think we're talking about here, where, we'll go to the projects in the 6th, 7th round, because it's like, what do you expect to get there anyway? And it sounds like they go a little bit different with it on their approach with trying to find a little more certainty in that spot.
All right, that's all I got.
So those are your corners, folks. Nearly 40-odd corners between the two of us for you guys to take a look at. This is a deep draft, and hopefully you can understand why we do think with all of these corners into it that, you're sitting, just think of it from John Schneider's perspective, even if we're not drafting early, is that you're in the 5th round. You've got a corner with a 3rd-round grade on the board versus an edge that's a 5th-round grade, or, a guard that's a 5th-round grade. Where do you get driven to if you're having value drive you in the mindset? And I think that that's what takes you to cornerback, much like it could take us to receiver, where it's just too good a value of the guy you have on the board available to you versus the other positions. And that's why you can't just throw it away and say there's no chance that they take that or go down that road.
I am ready for anything. when it comes to
anything
this
can
draft.
happen,
I'm
man.
just about
Any,
ready. I mean, I'm just about ready. I'm just about
Any,
ready. I mean, a left tackle would surprise me, right? That's the one that I would have a hard time understanding. But other than that, I'm ready to go with BPA pretty much down the line. So if BPA is the corner, then BPA is a corner.
That's right. Me as well. I don't want to talk long on this last little thing. I think it's something we should cover just because it got brought up in the chat, and I just want to make sure that I'm putting my record on this. A lot of people are making the big deal today, even nationally, and like Eisen and some people on the shows about the taking down the pictures in the building.
Okay.
I don't want to go too far on this, Brendan. I know we've got 3 hours on the show, but not a big deal from my standpoint. You want to create your own new regime, your own new energy. It doesn't mean you're not honoring the old, but I feel like the old loomed over the top of this organization with a pretty large shadow that you had to make sure that you kind of negated walking the door if you're Mike Macdonald.
Yeah, some of the players have even talked about how, we got to let that stuff go. Like, I think Marshawn Lynch was like, I'm surprised with how obsessed this place still is about 2013 when he was here in 2019. Yeah. It was like, build new stuff. So, no, I got no problem with it.
I do too. And it doesn't mean you're not still honoring those old players. Just mean that you're trying to create the new legacy. So, well, we are almost through the end of this, folks. We are inside a week away from the draft. Me and Brendan have one more BNB show that we're going to do on the safeties next Tuesday. So strap in for that. We will be back, and you're going to get a lot of BNB. Actually, you're going to get 4 BNB shows next week. So we'll be on Tuesday. We're going to be doing all days of the draft. We'll be doing a BNB show after the draft. So do prepare yourselves, tune on in. Both me and Brendan will be doing our own live streams on the day of the draft. You can watch both at the same time, man. Just get those going in, get those locked in. We're really looking forward to it. We've been prepping up for this for a couple of months, for a year now, for this draft. So I know he's excited. I'm excited to see how this is going to break down. It's very unpredictable. The Hawks could go in a variety of different ways. New coaching staff, John being able to just run it full and true, whichever way he sees fit. So hopefully it'll be a really exciting draft for us and you guys as well. But thank you, Brendan, for doing all this coverage with me. I've had a hell of a time breaking down these players with you. It's been awesome. Right. It'll be a great draft, brother. We'll knock this thing out of the park as we come through in the next week. So
I'm ready for it.
Well, do us this favor, folks, if you could. Just a small little favor. Hit that like button on both videos. Doesn't matter where you're watching here, watching over on Brendan's side. Also, sub on up Seahawks, Brendan Nelson, and the Hawks Nest, both, please. We'll be covering throughout the offseason and into the year. And we will be back soon on Tuesday, ready to see our Seahawks kick this draft's ass. But until that time, please, by God, don't you ever forget, never forget now. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.